And for more NASA videos, hit subscribe.
SpaceX, go for launch.
Max Q. Stage separation confirmed.
Landing burn.
Successful spacecraft separation.
Cygnus capture complete.
Welcome to ISS, Cygnus.
You're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 set to lift off from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida in just over 17 minutes from now. Today's mission marks SpaceX's 74th mission of 2024 and our 5th mission headed to the International Space Station so far this year, following Crew 8, CRS-30, NG-20, and AX-3. Thanks for tuning in to today's coverage of Northrop Grumman's 21st Commercial Resupply Services mission to the orbiting laboratory. I'm Zachary Lupin, an avionics reliability engineer here at SpaceX. Now, since 2012, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket has supported operations on the International Space Station, delivering critical science, hardware, and supplies to crew aboard the space station with the use of our Dragon crew and cargo vehicles. As part of NASA's Commercial Resupply Services contract, SpaceX and Northrop Grumman offer safe, reliable, and cost-effective transportation both to and from the International Space Station.
Stage 2 launch load
In
is
fact,
started.
Dragon and Cygnus are currently the only two operational U.S. cargo supply vehicles capable of supporting station activities, and Falcon 9 is the only U.S. launch vehicle in operation capable of delivering the spacecraft to low Earth orbit. And today's mission marks the second time that SpaceX is launching a CRS mission on behalf of Northrop Grumman. Now, the teams here at SpaceX are proud to provide these services,
Spacecraft is on
which
internal
ultimately
power.
further our goal of one day making life multiplanetary. At T-minus 16 minutes and counting, the vehicle is currently tracking to an on-time liftoff. We are watching the weather this morning, which is currently 35% favorable for liftoff. Now, if we don't launch today, we have a backup opportunity this Tuesday, August 6th at 10:18 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, as you might imagine, the crew on board the space station is preparing for their upcoming delivery. And for more on those preparations, I'll turn it over to NASA's Courtney Beasley. Courtney?
Thank you, Zachary, and good morning to everyone from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. It's a full redeployed the Solar Max Science satellite. He was then the commander of the ill-fated Challenger STS-51L mission in 1986. Northrop Grumman's resupply vehicle is poised to deliver roughly 4 tons of science, experiments, and equipment to the orbital outpost. After Cygnus separates from the upper stage of Falcon 9 today, the spacecraft will conduct a series of engine firings to increase its altitude to match that of the International Space Station. That will set it up for the start of joint operations between Northrop Grumman engineers in Dulles, Virginia, and the NASA Flight Control team here in Houston. A launch today will bring Cygnus to the station in the morning hours Tuesday, where NASA astronauts Matt Dominic and Jeanette Epps will be waiting in the cupola, set to use the station's robotic arm to reach out and grapple the spacecraft. That will be installed to the Earth-facing berthing mechanism on the Unity module for a stay of about 5.5 months. But we're counting down to launch as you are, Zachary, so back to you in Hawthorne.
Thanks, Courtney. Falcon 9 is a reusable 2-stage rocket designed and manufactured by SpaceX for the reliable and safe transport of people and payloads in Earth orbit and beyond. Now, this year we've launched 73 missions to date, which is on average 1 launch every 3 days. And we're looking to launch up to 148 missions in 2024. And reusability is what makes all of that possible. So with that, let's meet Falcon 9, the first and currently the only orbital class rocket capable of reflight. Starting at the top of the vehicle is the payload fairing, which is a protective shell that encases the payload being sent to space, which today is Cygnus. Made of a carbon composite material and having a 17-foot diameter, the space within the payload fairing is able to comfortably contain your average-sized fire truck. Now, that fairing made up of 2 halves will separate and jettison away from the vehicle, exposing the payload once Falcon 9 reaches space. Now, Cygnus rolled out to the pad on Friday morning after wrapping up the process known as encapsulation earlier this week. This payload fairing was specially customized to accommodate late load operations on the pad, and we'll talk a bit more about those modifications later on in the program. Continuing on down the vehicle, we have the second stage. The second stage is powered by a single Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC, which is optimized to perform in the vacuum of space. After stage separation, the MVAC will ignite and carry the payload to its final orbit. Now, the Falcon 9's first and second stages are connected via a black inner stage, which houses the MVAC engine and the system that decouples the two stages during stage separation. And below that is the first stage, which is powered by 9 Merlin engines. These 9 Merlin engines provide the initial thrust to lift Falcon 9 off of the ground through the lower, thicker part of the atmosphere. Each of these Merlin 1D engines delivers about 190,000 pounds of thrust at sea level, which gives Falcon 9 a combined 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Now, after stage separation, Stage 1, also called the booster, will return to Earth for recovery and reuse on a future mission. For today's mission, we'll be attempting to land this booster at Landing Zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. And this mission will mark this booster's 10th launch and landing, having previously flown AX-2, Euclid, AX-3, CRS-30, SES Astra 1P, and 4 Starlink missions. Now, weather continues to be a watch for today's launch from Space Launch Complex 40, and we'll continue providing you updates as the clock ticks closer to T0. For now, let's learn a bit more about the spacecraft delivering roughly 8,200 pounds of science and supplies to the International Space Station. Now, in order to support Cygnus missions, SpaceX designed a custom fairing and payload transfer truck with a mobile clean room to support late load operations, which happen while the rocket is horizontal and on the pad deck. Late load refers to loading cargo in the final hours before launch and after the spacecraft has already been encapsulated within the payload fairing. Now, with 8 minutes and 24 seconds to go, we can go for launch, and we'll continue to provide updates on the weather as we get closer to T0. For now, let's head back to Courtney for a closer look at the science on today's mission.
Yeah, Zachary, we are at the T-minus 8 minutes and counting to the launch of the Falcon 9 rocket and the Northrop Grumman Cygnus cargo craft, which is delivering roughly 4 tons of supplies and science experiments to the International Space Station. Now, science is the prime focus for crews living and working on the station, and today's delivery run aims to observe the development of blood vessels and engineered liver tissue, evaluate liquid and gas flow through porous media, demonstrate the production of many bloodstream and immune stem cells, and much more. Let's take a quick look at the science aboard Cygnus. Northrop Grumman is set to launch its 21st commercial resupply services mission to the International Space Station, carrying science to further NASA's missions to deep space and benefit life on Earth. A packed bed reactor will test how microgravity affects the simultaneous movement of gases and liquids. Results will aid the design of various space systems, including life support systems. Researchers will continue testing a technology to produce stem cells in space, aiming to improve outcomes for patients with certain blood diseases, autoimmune disorders, and cancers. Microscopic organisms will travel to station to provide crucial insights into how spaceflight affects the ability of damaged DNA to repair itself. Demonstrations are educational videos demonstrating STEM topics in space for students on Earth. For this mission, astronauts will use a balloon, a penny, and a hex nut to examine centripetal force. Discover more about all of the science making the journey to the orbiting lab at nasa.gov/ISS-science.
It's T-minus 6 minutes and 20 seconds, and the SpaceX team is currently working no significant issues. Now, at T-minus 38 minutes, the team concluded their go, no-go poll and gave the OK to proceed into propellant load and launch.
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete.
And good call out there for Stage 1 RP1 loading completion. Now, at this point, that RP1 loading is complete on the Falcon 9 second stage and nearly complete on the first stage. The pre-valves between the first stage engines and the propellant tanks are open, and at the T-minus 7-minute mark, engine chill began. Liquid oxygen loading is underway on both stages and will complete at the T-minus 2 minutes to launch. We're also currently loading helium gas into both stages.
Now, to make sure engine startup goes well, SpaceX performed what is called engine chill, where a small amount of the super chilled liquid oxygen flowed into the Merlin engine's turbo pumps, and this was done to avoid a thermal shock to the propulsion system when the full flow of super chilled liquid oxygen is introduced into the Falcon 9 plumbing. Cygnus is also undergoing final vehicle health checks at this moment as it prepares to go on internal battery power, all monitored by Northrop Grumman flight controllers in Dulles, Virginia.
Coming up shortly, the transporter erector, or TE, will retract away from the Falcon vehicle. The TE is the large truss structure you see there next to the rocket.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for strong back retract.
And good call out there. First, we'll see the clamps open around the second stage, and then the TE will pull away from the rocket by a few degrees. At T0, ground hydraulic systems will pull the TE from about 2 degrees to 45 degrees away from Falcon 9 as it lifts off to provide clearance for the vehicle. We should see those clamp arms opening around the second stage in just about 20 seconds from now.
Strong back lower has started.
And good call out there. Falcon 9's fuel consists of both a propellant and an oxidizer. For our Falcon vehicles, we use a refined kerosene called Rocket Propellant 1, or RP1, and liquid oxygen, or LOX. And there you can see those clamp arms opening around the Falcon 9 second stage. We'll then start to see the strong back recline away from the vehicle. And there you can see that strong back moving away from the Falcon rocket. Now, you may have noticed the white clouds building around the Falcon vehicle. Those white clouds are the chilled gas above the LOX tank that we vent overboard to maintain pressure in the tank as needed. And when that vented oxygen comes out into the warm Florida air, it condenses into clouds.
Now, as I mentioned earlier today, the booster supporting today's mission is flying for its 10th time, and a key indicator of this flight history is the soot that you might just be able to make out on the skin of the vehicle there. This soot comes from the carbon-based fuel of the rocket that gets deposited onto the body of the vehicle during re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And good call out there that Stage 1 LOX loading is now complete on the Falcon 9 first stage.
Now checkouts of the second stage thrust vector control actuators are underway. This is referred to as an engine gimbal or wiggle test. This is when SpaceX moves the nozzles ever so slightly to make sure that the guidance hardware is acceptable for flight. SpaceX does the same checkouts on the first stage engines, and that happens just seconds before ignition.
Now we should be hearing a call out.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And there's that call out right there for Stage 2 LOX loading completion. Now Cygnus is also performing its final health checks to make sure that all of its primary systems are ready for its rendezvous with the International Space Station. And as I mentioned earlier, those white clouds you see around the vehicle are complete.
Gas launch closeouts has started.
Good call out there. Those white clouds are completely normal and are just the chilled gas above the LOX tank that we vent overboard to maintain pressure in the tank as needed. Now coming up in about 15 seconds from now, we should hear the call out that Falcon 9 will be in startup, which will mean that the rocket's launch computers will have taken over the count.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And there's the call. Falcon 9 is now in startup. Cygnus is transitioning to internal power, and the Falcon 9 computers are in final pre-launch checks, instructing the
LD,
rocket through the
go
final
for launch.
seconds before liftoff. Both stages are now being pressurized for launch, and the range remains go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds. Seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition, engines full power, and liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go Cygnus, NG-21.
Falcon 9 and Cygnus take flight. The SS Dick Scobie is en route to the International Space Station.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
As you saw, successful liftoff from Space Launch Complex 40.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Good call out there. Coming up in just about 20 seconds from now, we should hear a call out for Max Q. The vehicle passes through Max Q, or the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure, when the increasing speed of Falcon and the decreasing air density combine to create
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
maximum aerodynamic pressure. And good call out there.
Max Q.
And there's that call out for Max Q. Coming up next are 5 events which will happen in rapid succession: main engine cutoff, stage separation, second engine start, boost back burn start, and then fairing separation. Main engine cutoff, or MECO, is where all 9...
Chill started.
Good call out there. MECO is where all 9 M1D engines on the Falcon 9 first stage shut down. This is followed by stage separation, or the separation of the first and second stages of Falcon. A few seconds later, the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite to boost Cygnus to low Earth orbit, and this is called out as Second Engine Start 1, or SES-1. After that, Falcon 9's first stage will...
Vehicle is following a nominal trajectory.
After that, Falcon 9's first stage will ignite again to orient itself to head back to land. And shortly thereafter, the two fairing halves will separate and expose the spacecraft to the vacuum of space. We should be hearing the first of those callouts happening in just a few moments from now.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Stage 1 boost back startup.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there we heard the callouts for all 5 of those events, which again were MECO, followed by stage separation, then SES-1, boost back burn start, and fairing separation. Now coming up shortly, we should hear a callout for completion of the boost back burn on the Falcon 9 first stage. This burn, which will last in total about 50 seconds, is the first of 3 burns the booster needs to go through to make its way back to Landing Zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida.
Boost back shutdown.
And there's that callout for boost back shutdown on the Falcon 9 first stage. Now, if you're just joining us, you're watching a live
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
Good call out there. If you're just joining us, you're watching a live webcast for NG-21, Northrop Grumman's 21st commercial resupply services mission to the International Space Station. This is SpaceX's 74th mission for 2024 and the 5th flight to the orbiting laboratory this year. Now, in order to make its way back to land today, the Falcon 9 first stage has 2 more burns to execute. Next up is the entry burn, where 3 of the Merlin engines will reignite. This helps to slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. And following the entry burn, the booster will go through its landing burn. And this is a single engine burn that brings the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land back on Earth. We should be hearing the call out for that entry burn in just about 2 minutes from now. Now, during the entry burn, Falcon 9 is decelerating by firing its Merlin engines, but the rocket is still moving really fast, and this causes the vehicle to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases, or plume, which deposit a layer of soot onto the vehicle's surface. And that soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses, and with each flight, the soot builds up a little more on the outside of the vehicle. Now, as a reminder, on the left-hand side of your screen is the Falcon 9 first stage as it makes its way back to Earth, and on the right side is the MVAC engine on the second stage currently carrying Cygnus to orbit. Now, the first stage is also equipped with 4 landing legs made of state-of-the-art carbon fiber with aluminum honeycomb. Placed symmetrically around the base of the rocket, they deploy just prior to landing. If successful, this will be the 10th time that we've recovered this particular booster and the 335th time that we've recovered.
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
335th time that we've recovered a first stage booster since our first successful landing in 2015. And we did have a good call out there for vehicles following nominal
Stage 1
trajectories.
transonic.
Amazing view of the Falcon 9 booster as it makes its way back to Landing Zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida.
Stage 1 landing burn. Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
A spectacular touchdown of our Falcon 9 booster at Landing Zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Now again, this booster just completed its 10th flight and the 335th successful landing.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance.
335th successful landing.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
For an orbital class rocket, including both Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy missions, and good callouts there on the nets. Now, coming up at around the 8.5-minute mark, we should hear a call out for second engine cutoff 1, or SECO 1, which is when the MVAC engine on the second stage shuts down. And that'll conclude the roughly 6-minute burn by this engine needed to get Cygnus into the proper orbit for eventually intercepting the International Space Station. We should hear that call out in just a couple moments.
MVAC shutdown.
And there's that call out for the MVAC shutdown on the Falcon 9 second stage. We're now waiting for confirmation of good orbit.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And there's that call out for nominal orbital insertion. At T plus 9 minutes into the mission, and the second stage has one last major task, commanding separation of the Cygnus spacecraft just a few minutes from now. Now, for those of you just tuning in, you're watching a live webcast for NG-21, Northrop Grumman's 21st commercial resupply services mission to the International Space Station. This is SpaceX's 74th mission for 2024 and the 5th flight to the International Space Station this year. And for those of you following along, you'll know that Cygnus will be joining the Crew 8 SpaceX Dragon spacecraft, which docked with the space station earlier this year in March. Now, both Northrop Grumman and SpaceX have a long history of supporting the International Space Station with cargo missions like today's. SpaceX's first commercial resupply services, or CRS mission, CRS-1, launched in 2012 and made history by restoring America's capability to deliver and return cargo to the station. The Cygnus spacecraft has been in honor of an individual who has made substantial contributions to human spaceflight. Northrop Grumman named the NG-21 Cygnus spacecraft in remembrance and celebration of the life of Francis R. Dick Scobie, a United States Air Force pilot and NASA astronaut, best known as the commander of the 1986 Space Shuttle Challenger mission, STS-51L. Now, shortly after launch, the vehicle experienced a fatal disaster, and he lost his life along with 6 other crew members. Scobie was an astronaut, pilot, and engineer who commanded the 1986 Challenger mission. In 1966, he obtained his U.S. Air Force pilot wings, and shortly after served a tour of duty in Vietnam. When he returned, he was selected to attend the U.S. Air Force Aerospace Research Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base in California. And over the next several years, he served as a test pilot, logging more than 6,500 hours of flying time in 45 different types of aircraft. In 1978, Scobie was selected into NASA's astronaut candidate class, completing training in August of 1979. Now, in addition to his astronaut role, Scobie was an instructor pilot on the NASA Boeing 747 shuttle carrier airplane. In 1984, he was selected to fly as pilot of the STS-41C mission, during which Scobie logged 168 hours in space. And then in 1986, served as commander of the Challenger spacecraft. Scobie was posthumously awarded the Congressional Space Medal of Honor in 2004 by President George W. Bush for meritorious and dedicated service to the nation and his pioneering contributions to human spaceflight. Commander Scobie is memorialized all over the country, including at an exhibit at the National Medal of Honor Heritage Center and at Arlington National Cemetery, where the 7 Challenger crew members are honored for their incredible courage. We're currently at T plus 13 minutes and 12 seconds and counting, and we're expecting to hear the call out for payload deploy at around the T plus 14 minute and 36 second mark. As a reminder, this is SpaceX's 5th mission headed to the International Space Station so far this year, following Crew 8, CRS-30, NG-20, and AX-3. Following separation, Cygnus will have a nearly 40-hour transit to the space station, where the station's Canadarm2 will grapple Cygnus and the spacecraft will attach to the Unity module's Earth-facing port for cargo unloading by the Expedition 71 crew. We should be hearing that call out for payload deployment in just about 25 seconds from now. Should be hearing that call out any moment for payload deployment of the Cygnus spacecraft.
Cygnus deploy confirmed.
And there you have it, a successful spacecraft separation. The Cygnus spacecraft is now on its way to the International Space Station, and as mentioned, is expected to arrive about 40 hours from now. And with successful separation, that's going to do it for me here in Hawthorne. Be sure to check spacex.com/launches for a schedule of our upcoming missions. In the meantime, Courtney, what's next for Cygnus?
Thanks, Zachary, and welcome back into the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center. Next up will be the deployment of Cygnus's solar arrays, scheduled to begin at about 2.5 hours after launch, and it should take about 48 minutes to be completed. Once those arrays are deployed, we will provide an update on the station blog with the latest news. But joining me now on the phone is Bill Spetch, the Operations Integration Manager for the International Space Station program. Bill, thanks for joining us, and how significant was today's launch as partners collaborated to send Cygnus on its way to the station?
I will tell you, today's launch is very significant, as all of our missions to the ISS are. Each mission delivers critical resupply items to the vehicle, food, water, critical spares, but most significantly, it delivers the hardware and samples to conduct the groundbreaking science that is only possible on the ISS. It is amazing as I reflect back on the previous 20 Cygnus vehicle launches to see just how much capability has been added to the vehicle to support the ISS mission. I had the privilege to be at the first commercial resupply services launch for Cygnus to ISS, and it is awesome seeing where we are today with this launch. I'm really excited that the weather cooperated with us to get this mission underway.
Bill, we're glad the weather cooperated too. If you would please outline for us the upcoming activities for the crew on board the station as they prepare for Cygnus's arrival early Tuesday.
So we get most of the items in place and checked out before we launch as part of our launch commit criteria. The crew has already done some practice runs on board for grappling Cygnus when it arrives. Closer to the arrival, they will set up to monitor its approach to the capture point before ultimately grappling the spacecraft with the robotic arm.
And Bill, anytime a visiting vehicle arrives at the station, there's a choreography to unload the spacecraft. How complex is that process, and what factors contribute to it?
It does take a lot of planning and choreography to unload Cygnus. The team on the ground looks at a number of factors when addressing how the vehicle will be unloaded. First and foremost is we want to get going on all the time-critical science experiments that arrive on the vehicle. Those will be uploaded first to allow the crew to start conducting those experiments. The team must also take into account the available storage on board the ISS. This mission is delivering over 8,000 pounds of science, supplies, and hardware that takes up a lot of space. The team will stage what is retrieved from Cygnus in order to balance that with the available space inside the ISS. And finally, some of the hardware arriving will be installed on the ISS at planned times later during the mission. The teams account for all of these factors when planning how and when to unload the spacecraft.
All right, Bill Spetch, the Operations Integration Manager for the International Space Station program. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And with that, we will wrap up our launch coverage of Northrop Grumman's 21st Commercial Resupply Services mission. Cygnus is now on course to be captured at about 2:10 a.m. Central Time, 3:10 a.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday morning. Live coverage of rendezvous and capture will begin at 12:30 a.m. Central Time, 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by coverage of Cygnus's installation to the station at 3:30 a.m. Central Time and 4:30 a.m. Eastern. In the meantime, you can learn even more about the mission on the web at nasa.gov/commercial resupply. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday morning.
Enjoy good old magical cream while I'm there. Big things real over magic. Magical cream keep double treat.
This is the urban jungle, where the engine must survive all extremes, from smooth highways to rough dirt and gravel. Your engine must perform on unpredictable road conditions. That's why ZIC Urban ProTech is engineered to protect your engine against the challenges of urban driving.
ZIC, High-Tech Lubricants Limited.
So good news there from Mission Control, and our next major countdown event will be around the...
In SpaceX Freedom, we can confirm our displays are configured for launch. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the entire team around the world for your hard work and dedication to get us to this point. Alex and I are ready and honored to represent you and everyone back on Earth. A huge thanks to our families and friends for your unwavering support, and to Crew 9, unbreakable. We go together.
SpaceX copies. You've proven you're ready, Dragon, and we're looking forward to seeing a full capsule at splashdown.
Really exciting commentary there from Commander Nick Hague. And with that, we are just about 9.5 minutes to launch. And right now, the Falcon 9 launch commit criteria are being checked by our onboard computers. Those launch commit criteria are specific
flight controllers reporting on trajectory, speed, booster performance, and other key milestones. And there are also some other calls you'll hear the crew make after liftoff. The crew will report out on a few number and letter combinations, and these mark different abort zones through the flight up the eastern seaboard. The first two are 1A and 1B, and these are available when the first stage is firing. The next are 2A through 2E. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in, but we will only hear the call for 2A. Diverting a little bit from the other naming system, you will also hear the call Shannon, and that refers to Shannon, Ireland. That means the crew could target off the coast of Ireland if they needed to abort later in the second stage burn. Again, you'll hear these calls throughout the flight uphill, along with the key performance callouts from the guidance, navigation, and control officer, as well as the propulsion lead.
One of the next callouts we're listening for in our countdown is the announcement that Stage 1 engine chill has started, which is one of the key processes that prepares the engines onboard our first stage for flight. Right now, propellant in the tanks is isolated from the engines, but at T-minus 7 minutes, we'll open the engine pre-valves and start passing just a trickle of liquid oxygen through the Merlin engine pumps, chilling those engines for the start sequence.
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
Confirmation there that engine chill has started. Now, we do this because the super chilled and densified liquid oxygen on board is really, really cold. So we use the process to bring that engine hardware down to a cooler temperature before flowing all of the LOX and propellant into it during flight. At liftoff, Falcon 9 is consuming 700 gallons of fuel per second. So engine chill helps us to prevent thermal shock and ensures nominal engine performance. The next thing we're listening in for is the confirmation that RP1 load has been completed on board Stage 1.
RP1 is that densified kerosene or rocket fuel that propels the crew into orbit. All of that RP1 is we are waiting to hear that it is fully loaded onto the rocket, and the second stage loading was completed earlier. So we're still loading liquid oxygen as well on the first and second stages.
Stage 1 fuel load is complete.
Confirmation right on time that RP1, the densified kerosene loading, is now complete. Again, still loading liquid oxygen on the first and second stages. We need this to combine with the densified kerosene. That RP1 liquid propellant needs an oxidizer to combine with in order to ignite. Coming up next at the 5-minute mark, we'll hear the call for Dragon to configure for terminal count and then transition over to internal power. And then we'll hear the propellant tanks on Falcon 9 are getting ready to pressurize, which means they'll have some additional rigidity and structural support for the rocket as we get ready for the strong back to retract. The strong back provides access to Falcon 9's fueling lines and umbilicals for both prop load and the different gases being loaded on board. The clamp arms will open and it'll move just a couple of degrees at first, and then we will see it swing open completely at the moment of liftoff. We'll continue to check through a couple more fueling milestones, including one around the 2-minute mark before flight, where we'll hear liquid oxygen loading is complete on the second stage.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
Dragon in configure for terminal count.
Now under 5 minutes to launch, we are in terminal count, meaning the Dragon onboard computers take control of the spacecraft. Again, we are still watching first stage as its liquid oxygen loading continues. That'll be complete around 3 minutes, followed by completion of second stage liquid oxygen loading about 1 minute later.
Strong back retract has started.
Just heard that call out from mission control that strong back retract has started. And if we keep a close eye on the screen, there we go, just coming out of those clouds of liquid oxygen, we got to see those clamp arms opening up around stage 2. What's going to happen now is that our strong back will recline just about 2 degrees away from the vehicle. But the TE will throw back all the way to 45 degrees at liftoff, clearing the way for Falcon 9 to leave the pad. As Leah mentioned, that strong back does route the vehicle's fluid and telemetry lines all the way up to the rocket and our spacecraft today. Good views of the strong back moving away from Falcon 9 and Dragon there on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. With that, we are just about 30 seconds away from LOX load completion on board the first stage.
As Ronnie mentioned, standing by just about 20 seconds from now, we're expecting to hear the liquid oxygen loading will finish. Again, this is required to combine with that RP1, the densified kerosene, to give us the chemical composition we need to propel the rocket into space. All of these white clouds of vapor you see on your screen are normal. We will continue to see them build as we get closer to launch. And that's due to this liquid oxygen. It's super chilled, so some of that does boil off in the hot Florida air.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
There's confirmation right on time.
Dragon in terminal count and on internal power.
That we both have LOX load complete on the stage 1 and that Dragon is on internal power. We are expecting LOX loading to last for just about another 30 seconds on board stage 2. And then we should see a vent down of the TE LOX lines. That's going to produce another one of those large white clouds moving away from the vehicle. Again, as Leah just mentioned, that is totally normal and happens when that cooler liquid oxygen that's venting off the surface of the tanks comes into contact with that humid Florida air along the Space Coast.
We're standing by now for stage 2 liquid oxygen loading to be complete.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
Dragon in auto idle.
सस्ता शैम्पू लगाओगे तो सर झुकाते रह जाओगे। ले आओ हेड एंड शोल्डर्स जो जड़ तक जाए ताकि डैंड्रफ वापस ना आए। हेड एंड शोल्डर्स अब झुका के नहीं सर उठा के।
अब कोका कोला की 2 लीटर बॉटल सिर्फ 220 रुपए में। खाना बनाए मैजिकल कोका कोला के साथ।
With confirmation of that liquid oxygen load complete, gas closeout has
started. Expect loud venting.
right on time. That gas closeout has begun. So we are now isolating all the feed lines for the different gas systems from the Falcon 9 rocket. Those will then get vented overboard through the umbilicals and the strong back itself. And you can actually hear that venting right now. Now, something else you'll see is our sound suppression technique. Our rockets are super loud, and that sound can impart pressure loads back on the rocket itself. So just before liftoff, you'll see a ton of water dumping onto the pad. This absorbs and prevents the sound from hitting the structure and reverberating back onto the rocket, which could cause
FTS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
Dragon in countdown.
Now that we are in countdown, the flight computer on Dragon will switch to countdown mode. And we've also heard the flight termination system is armed.
Go for launch.
Freedom is go for launch.
That's our final go for launch. SpaceX reporting go and the crew reporting go.
30 seconds.
Standing by for the first launch of
10,
humans
9,
from Space Launch Complex 40.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Taking full power. And liftoff. Crew 9. Go SpaceX. Go Falcon. Go NASA.
Liftoff of Crew 9 now soaring to the International Space Station.
Stage 1 Alpha.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Copy 1 Alpha.
Those 9 Merlin engines now providing 1.7 million pounds of thrust, propelling Falcon 9 and Crew 9 and continuing to get good calls from teams here on the ground.
Of course, these incredible views mean we are just a little bit past 30 minutes or 30 seconds into our 9th rotational crew mission.
Power telemetry nominal.
On board Dragon and Falcon 9 with good callouts from mission control that everything is looking good. With that, stage 1 is throttling down to pass through max Q, which is the period of maximum dynamic pressure on Falcon 9 during ascent.
Max Q.
Confirmation of max Q.
Vehicle is supersonic.
And that Falcon 9 is now traveling faster than the speed of sound.
Stage 1 throttle up.
Stage 1 Bravo.
Copy 1 Bravo.
That call out for 1 Bravo means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage and continuing to get good performance.
And vac chill is underway.
Crew is pulling just over 2 Gs at this point. Next up, we heard the engine chill on the second stage MVAC engine has begun, and then we will have MECO, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines on the first stage will cut off ahead of the first and the second stages, and then will separate from one another. Then that single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite and continue to carry Crew 9 to orbit.
Separation and second engine start 1. You did hear mission control out that we are chilling our There's confirmation of MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage 2 Alpha.
And back ignition.
Copy 2 Alpha.
With that, we have had confirmation of MECO, stage SEP, and the ignition of our MVAC engine on board stage 2. Our next major milestone is going to be the beginning of stage 1 boost back burn, which is expected in just a couple of seconds here. Of course, if you are just joining us, you've got views of our first stage on the left-hand side of your screen and of MVAC burning with our Crew 9 astronauts aboard up in space on the right-hand side of your screen.
Now we are coming up on 3 minutes and 20 seconds since liftoff today, traveling over 4,000 miles per hour and 76 miles downrange.
As our first stage makes its way back to Earth, we are tracking a landing attempt today at landing zone 1, not too far from where we lifted off in Cape Canaveral, Florida.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Confirmation there that both vehicles
nominal trajectory.
Are on nominal trajectories. Everything is looking good.
And we're getting good performance on that single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. The crew's G-load dips right now. We are going to prepare to hit the separation event. Right now, they're about 1 G, which is about what we're used to experiencing on Earth. Crew's traveling almost 5,000 miles per hour now and 105 miles in altitude.
As we await the entry burn for our first stage, you are getting great views of it on the left-hand side of your screen. Just as kind of a quick point of reference, those grid fins are about 4 by 5 feet, so roughly the size of a coffee table.
दो लीटर की ठंड मिले सिर्फ 200 में और 1.5 लीटर सिर्फ 150 में।
Getting our first tracking shots of the booster on its way back to Earth. Again, we are tracking the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen and MVAC up in space on the right.
And we do continue to hear good calls for that second stage. Again, we will see this continue to fire until close to 9 minutes into the flight, now at 5 minutes and 45 seconds since liftoff today. This is accelerating Dragon to more than 17,000.
Nominal trajectory.
More good news.
Freedom copies, nominal trajectory.
This second stage is bringing Dragon to more than 17,000 miles per hour. That puts our crew in orbit. And the single Merlin vacuum engine can produce over 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space.
Stage 1 does perform 3 burns on its way back to Earth. The first is the boost back burn, followed shortly thereafter by the entry burn. The entry burn is used by Falcon 9 to slow the vehicle down before it reaches the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Nominal trajectory is there from Mission Control.
Freedom copies, nominal trajectory.
That entry burn is, of course, followed by the landing burn, during which time we'll light 3 of the Merlin engines on board the first stage. And we expect to see that landing burn just about a minute before we expect Dragon to be inserted into orbit. So we have 2 very exciting phases of flight, both for our first stage and our Crew 9 astronauts happening here at the same time.
Stage 2 FTS has based.
So a great touchdown of stage 1 there just a second ago. And now, of course, we are continuing to follow our Crew 9 astronauts on their way to space.
And we continue to get good calls for this second stage, that Merlin vacuum engine continuing to fire and propel our crew, now moving over 12,600 miles per hour and 611 miles downrange. Just over 8 minutes since liftoff today, so we are expecting to see this continue to fire until just about the 9-minute mark, at which point this engine will cut off. And of course, Dragon will coast for a few minutes, still attached to the second stage.
Shannon.
That call.
Copy, Shannon.
That call is for Shannon, Ireland. That would be the abort zone if we were to abort at this point in the flight. However, we are continuing to hear good calls about Dragon's performance.
MVAC shutdown.
Confirmation of the Merlin vacuum engine shutting down.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
Good news there from
Freedom copies, nominal orbital insertion.
From Mission Control and our crew that we have had nominal
Dragon,
orbit insertion.
SpaceX, launch escape system disarmed.
Freedom copies, LES disarmed.
In 9 quick minutes, we now have 2 new crew members on their way to the International Space Station, having taken off from Space Launch Complex 40. The crew now being in a good or expected orbit. We'll continue to coast for these few minutes, and then we get our first views inside the capsule of our 2 crew members, Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov. They are just continuing to stay in their suits and in their seats during this dynamic portion of the flight. We're going to continue to coast for a few minutes after this second stage engine cutoff. This allows the rates and motion from that long burn to settle out. There are some small reaction thrusters on the upper stage or the upper part of the second stage that can be used to counteract any residual motion. That basically makes sure we're in a stable coast before Dragon separates from Falcon, and that'll happen about 12 minutes into the flight. So about a minute and a half from now, we expect to see Dragon actually separating from the second stage. Again, we did hear the crew has been successfully inserted into a good orbit. And again, this is them now in microgravity, one of them, Alexander Gorbanov, for the very first time.
So as Leah mentioned, we are now just a few minutes away from the separation of Dragon from stage 2, during which time a number of activation checkouts occur. Automatically, first we're going to be checking out 12 of the Draco maneuvering thrusters, all around the service section of the Dragon spacecraft. We're also, of course, going to get ready for that nose cone opening, which will allow Dragon to dock with the International Space Station about 28 hours from now. The nose cone stays closed for the flight uphill to help protect against all of the guidance, navigation, and control sensors and Dragon's docking adapter. It's also covering 4 of our Draco thrusters that will be used for the majority of different phasing burns required as Dragon chases down the space station. We are currently standing by for that separation, which could happen anytime in the next couple of minutes.
Currently, you can see the crew is just relaxing in their seats. They are definitely vigilant, though. They are able to monitor those crew displays in front of them, keep up with what's going on in the mission. They could take control if they needed to. However, it's been a seamless ride to space today.
Good views there, looking up into Dragon's trunk, looking at the heat shield on the bottom of Dragon that Crew 9 will use when it returns home early next year.
Dragon, SpaceX, Dragon separation confirmed.
There.
And Freedom copies, good separation.
There you heard from Mission Control. Both
Dragon, Chief Engineer on Countdown 1. Nick, Alex, on behalf of the entire team, we thank you for flying with Falcon 9 today and wish you a great mission.
And Freedom, this is Launch Director on Countdown. On behalf of the entire SpaceX Launch and Recovery team, I'd like to extend our congratulations to the entire Crew 9 team. Zena, Stephanie, Nick, Alex, Butch, and Sunny. It's an honor to be a part of this mission with all of you. I'd also like to give a shout out to the Falcon 9 Crew 9 combo. The best bundle in the league, baby. Godspeed, Crew 9.
Couldn't say it any better. Thank you, guys. You know, we had the opportunity to meet so many people that were involved with the Falcon 9, and along the way was a sweet ride. I'm pretty sure my youngest son would say it was Sigma. Alex has got a few words to add as well.
And all the entities that made this launch possible. Roscosmos, NASA, Big SpaceX. And thank you to my family and friends for their support. And also I'd like to express my gratitude to the hundreds of thousands of people around the world who are involved in the development of space technologies and community power. Today's launch is also their accomplishment. Хочу сказать спасибо Роскосмосу, НАСА совместно с SpaceX за успешный запуск человека на орбиту за очередной...
Orbit on your screen right now.
It's been about 14 minutes and 30 seconds since coming up on 15 minutes now since liftoff today. You got a quick look inside the capsule.
Dragon, SpaceX, we had a nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts. Nose cone deploy is in progress.
And Freedom copies all. Thank you.
Confirmation there that our nose cone deploy is underway. That means that the 6 hooks that hold the nose cone in place during launch and the ascent portions of flight have begun to retract. That will allow the nose cone to start to swing open and deploy. That will uncover a number of critical systems for the flight up to the space station, including the forward bulkhead thrusters and the docking hatch. Incredible views from our crew up in space on your screen right now, but I'm sure it's nothing compared to the view out of Dragon's window as they make their way to the space station.
I can only imagine. And that journey to the space station will take about 28 hours, so they won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon. In the meantime, they will have the opportunity to get out of their suits, to get out of their seats as well, and kind of just enjoy the ride. They're going to shift into some off-duty time. That allows them to prepare any food that they would want to. That allows them to maybe even call down to the ground. They will also obviously get some sleep before a really big day tomorrow, monitoring the arrival and docking to the International Space Station. Of course, we're going to cover all of that live. I'm really looking forward to seeing 2 more crew members float into the orbiting laboratory. And if you're just joining us, we did lift off now at 16 minutes and 29 seconds ago. That was right on time at 1:17 p.m. Eastern Time from Space Launch Complex 40 down at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. We have 2 members on board Dragon today. That's NASA astronaut Nick Hague, who's serving as the commander, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov, who's making his very first flight to space. Once they arrive at the International Space Station tomorrow afternoon, they will be joining 9 other crew members on orbit. They'll be up there for about a week. A week is probably the best guess, until the Crew 8 team, it is time for that crew to come home. Of course, they launched about 7 months ago at this point, and they will undock after they have completed a handover period with the Crew 9 crew, bringing them up to speed on everything that they've been working on for the last 7 months in orbit. So once they depart, we'll be back down to our typical approximately 7 people living and working aboard the International Space Station.
अब एंजॉय करो मैजिकल क्रीम वाला नया बिग फ्रीज रियो ओवर मैजिकल क्रीम की डबल ट्रीट।
जिंदगी से पैसे रिसीव करना हुआ अब बहुत ही आसान। किसी भी बैंकिंग ऐप से अपनी जिंदगी रास्ट इनेबल्ड QR को स्कैन करो और मनी ट्रांसफर को सिंपल करो।
We are getting really spectacular views from up in space today. Shot there of our MVAC engine. We did get confirmation several minutes ago of SES-1.
We know that nose cone opening is underway as well. Those are a series of hooks and latches that allow the nose cone to open. And that nose cone is closed during launch to protect the docking hatch, to protect 4 bulkhead thrusters that we will use for some of the larger burns that help us get to the International Space Station.
One of the other things we're doing right now is going ahead and opening the ECLSS system, which stands for the Environmental Control and Life Support System, which will be activated inside of Dragon. As Leah mentioned earlier, soon our crew will be able to get their visors open and get out of their spacesuits and settle in for that 20-hour ride, or 28-hour ride to the International Space Station. Good views there of the opening of Dragon's nose cone on the left-hand side of your screen.
And coming up on 19 minutes since liftoff today, the crew, again, had a good orbital insertion, and that actually puts 14 people currently in low Earth orbit. That includes those living on the International Space Station right now, as well as those living on the Chinese space station. So a total of 14 humans are now not off the planet, but rather orbiting around it.
more good views from our Dragon nose cone on the left-hand side of your screen. As it very gradually swings open, obviously in space, everything we do has an equal and opposite reaction, so slow and steady really wins the race here.
Again, now 20 minutes since liftoff today. Dragon is flying free from the second stage, and it looks like they're about to enter an orbital nighttime. So now that they're at orbital velocity, that's 17,500 miles per hour, they are going to see 16 sunrises and sunsets a day. Again, it was an on-time liftoff at 1:17 p.m. Eastern Time from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, and a clean ride uphill.
We've had some good communication from Mission Control up to our Crew 9 astronauts already today. One of the things you may hear every time we communicate with the crew is a slight beep beforehand. That's called a Quindar tone, and actually dates all the way back to the early days of human spaceflight, and is effectively a radio signal indicating that we're communicating between the crew in orbit and our Mission Control team on the ground.
We now have views back inside the capsule.
Dragon SpaceX, we had a nominal nose cone opening. We do have just about 3 minutes here left in the ground station pass if you've got any fluffy stowaways you'd like to introduce.
And Freedom copies, good drinker checkout, good nose cone opening. And I just so happen to have a furry friend with me. Yeah, SpaceX Freedom. So yeah, I've got a little Falcon here. I love the package of Falcon 9, Crew 9. Yeah, we've got a Falcon on board with us. This one's a multi-flyer though. Was on my first flight with Alexei and I, and with Alexei and I and Christina, and now me and Alex. So say hello to Aurora.
And we see your Dragon. Actually, a good view right now because we're looking at the display cam. And Dragon delayed call, but nominal TCS reconfiguration as well as forward bulkhead Draco checkouts.
इस मैजिकल ऑफर को जाने ना दें। अब कोका कोला की 2 लीटर बोतल सिर्फ 220 रुपए में। खाना बनाए मैजिकल कोका कोला के साथ।
And Freedom copies, good TCS, good Draco checkouts.
Spectacular views of our Crew 9 astronauts and zero-G indicator up in orbit. Human spaceflight has come so far in the last 5 years with Dragon. Since Demo 2 in May of 2020, SpaceX's Dragon fleet has launched a total of 54 crew members to space, 34 on behalf of NASA and their partners, and 20 commercial astronauts, including the first 2 all-civilian missions to space and the first 3 all-private passenger missions to the International Space Station.
In addition to flying people, excuse me, SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft also enables researchers the opportunity to fly critical science to orbit. And that's just like what we saw with the 3 investigations that NASA's Human Research Program flew on Polaris Dawn. So far, SpaceX and Dragon have carried over 1,000 research experiments to and from low Earth orbit, both to the International Space Station and on our free flyer missions as well.
From DNA sequencing to 3D printing, studies enabled by Dragon and the International Space Station test a variety of technologies, systems, and materials that will be needed for future long-duration exploration missions. Every mission yields critical research and learnings that help make life both on Earth and in space better. And flights like today's help us continue to lay this foundation for our future among the stars and continue our mission to make life multiplanetary.
But for now, we'll be signing off from SpaceX, and we're going to send you back over to NASA. But before we go, we do want to thank NASA for entrusting us with today's mission. And of course, thank you to all of the viewers for being here with us today.
Yeah, it was a really special mission. It was fantastic to see now 2 new crew members in orbit and on the way to the International Space Station. So with that, we're going to end our coverage from Hawthorne until we pick back up with our docking coverage in about 26 hours. So for now, we're going to send it back to you, Zena and Daryl at Kennedy Space Center to wrap up today's launch coverage.
Thank you very much, Leah and Atticus, and welcome back here to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We're just about 25 minutes ago. We watched Crew 9 lift off from Space Launch Complex 40 for the first time with humans at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov are now en route to the International Space Station. I'm Daryl Dale, and this is NASA astronaut Zena Cardman, who has been with us for the past 4 hours, documenting Crew 9's path from astronaut crew quarters, suiting up all the way to the rocket, lifting off, and then getting into space today. And I got to watch it with Zena in this role. I get to watch oftentimes as we break, go outside and watch a launch with the astronaut. And in this particular case, Zena, with you being the commander from the beginning and then giving up your seat, you and fellow astronaut Stephanie Wilson, so that those seats could be used by Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams to come back. This has a very close association to you, clearly. What was your reaction there when you were watching them lift off into space?
Yeah, Daryl, I think every crewed launch that I have ever watched has really brought me a lot of emotion. This one today was especially unique. I think it was hard not to watch that rocket lift off without thinking, that's my rocket and that's my crew. But I also know that I'm not the only person who can think that. Of course, we have Stephanie Wilson here today, but I mean, there are many, many people who made this mission happen, and there are people on orbit who will be taking this capsule home. And it makes me very proud to know that I am one of many people who can say, that's my crew, that's my rocket. Makes me really proud, makes me feel very connected to this mission that we all get to take part of. Go Crew 9.
Well said, Zena. And an emotional moment in time out there watching the rocket lift off. And now the work begins. You will start training for the next mission. You spent 1.5 years training for this one. You're now going to go into space at some point. What does the future hold for you at this point?
Yeah, it's a little bit to be determined. We've got a lot of exciting things ahead. I'm looking forward to starting training again at some point. And in the meantime, I can't wait to watch Nick and Alexander and the entire Expedition 72 crew really get to work and execute that mission that we all have worked so hard to make possible.
Yeah, Nick and Alexander will become part of Expedition 72, as you mentioned, when they arrive on Space Station. NASA's Megan Cruz has joined us now with Jennifer Buckley, the chief scientist for the ISS program, with more about the science that's happening on board for Expedition 72. Megan.
Yeah, it's great to have Jen here. And Jen, you know, obviously we saw some changes through the mission, most notably the change from a 4 to a 2-person crew. Did any changes affect the science?
Well, the human research is specific to the crew member. So Butch and Sonny have their science complement that will stay with them. But other than that, we didn't have to adjust our science plans. Butch and Sonny are experienced crew members, so they jumped right in and have been helping us already with science on board, and we were able to keep our plan complement.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I know Expedition 72, they're going to be responsible for making a repair on the NICER instrument on the space station. Can you tell us about that instrument, its significance?
That's right. So NICER is an X-ray telescope that's mounted outside of the International Space Station, and it takes a look at neutron stars. Neutron stars are born from the cinders of a supernova event. They are the leftover material that then form neutron stars, and they're going to be repairing a light leak that occurred in May of 2023, which gave us some degraded detectors on that instrument.
Okay, gotcha. And so that's what we're fixing so that hopefully it works tip-top shape.
That's right. So right now with the damage, we still get full data during darkness. However, during sunlight, it degrades the data that we're able to get. And so when they do that repair in December, we'll bring NICER back up to its full capability.
Oh, perfect. Okay, well, obviously we as NASA look out into the universe, but also we look back at our own Earth. And for those who don't know, one way that we do that and look at our Earth is we have our astronauts take photos from the International Space Station. And I was told that more photos were taken from the ISS of Earth in the last 6 months than all of 2023.
That's right. So in the first 6 months of 2024, they took over 330,000 photographs.
Oh my gosh.
So, this photography, apart from being absolutely beautiful, is really important science imagery. As you mentioned before, this allows us to take a look at our planet and we can see how it's changing over time, as well as any environmental impacts. We also support the Disaster Response Network. So we're able to look at natural disasters like wildfires or even hurricanes. So we were involved in taking some imagery of Hurricane Helene as well. And we support other government agencies and provide that data.
Yeah, it's always so important to talk about, yes, the work that we do as we look out into the universe, but also as we reflect here on Earth and see what we can do to improve things for everyone. So Jen, thank you so much. Thanks for detailing the science for us. We'll send it back to our folks there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Megan, and good to be back with you here with NASA astronaut Zena Cardman. We are wrapping up our coverage for today after a successful launch of Crew 9. But before we do, I want to know if you take one more social question.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Let's put it up for us. This is, let's see, Maya, age 10, asks, I want to know, because I want to work there, how is it to work at NASA? I want to be an aerospace engineer when I grow up.
That is awesome. Maya, we can't wait to have you in the NASA family. It's an amazing place to work. I love working in spaceflight, human spaceflight especially, and there are so many different types of people with different backgrounds who work. I love that we can all come together for this common goal coming from such different backgrounds. So all you've got to do is apply, and we'll see you soon.
As a young girl yourself, you probably never imagined that you would be here.
I sure did not.
And you made it happen as well.
That's right. Myself, but most especially all of the mentors and family and friends who made me who I am. Takes a team.
Well said, Zena. Now, as we wrap things up, we want to let you know that though our coverage is coming to a close, you can still follow along with Crew 9's entire journey to the station by listening to the Mission Real-Time Audio Commentary. Just to do that, you can snap that QR code that you see on the screen there, or if you're watching us on your phone, just screen grab it and you can click on it later. Nick and Alexander are on course to arrive at the International Space Station around 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, September 29th. On-camera coverage of docking and arrival will resume about 2 hours before that happens on NASA Plus. And of course, that's always a big moment when the crew arrives, especially not just for the people who are going there, that's their destination, but for the people who get to see them as well.
Absolutely. It's a really joyful moment. I love few things more than I love watching astronauts fresh through that hatch, hugging each other and welcoming their new crewmates. It's an amazing thing to see.
And there's 3 of them, if you count this little guy right here, which you brought on board.
That's right.
This was the zero-G indicator.
That's exactly right. And I absolutely love the history that the zero-G indicator has for Nick Hague specifically. And I'm sure Alexei Ovchinin will be happy to be reunited with that zero-G indicator as well. So getting the band back together.
Seems like it's a good luck charm at this point.
It seems that way.
All right. Well, Zena, I want to thank you for co-hosting with me today. Yeah, I know it was a challenge. It was emotional at times, but thank you for sharing your insight, your experiences, your knowledge, but most of all, your heart. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Daryl. Go Crew 9.
Go Crew 9. All right, with that, we're going to wrap it up and wish you a great day. An important reminder, though, about an upcoming launch in a few weeks here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on October 10th at 12:31 p.m. Europa Clipper is scheduled to lift off aboard a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket on its 5.5-year journey to Jupiter's moon, Europa. You can watch it live right here on NASA Plus starting at 11:30 a.m. Again, huge thanks to all of our guests, for everyone who joined us today. But most importantly, we appreciate you for being here and watching. You can keep up with any Crew 9 updates to the mission using the online resources you see on your screen now. For everyone here at NASA and SpaceX, have a great rest of the day. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon, but we leave you now with a moment looking back at the highlights from suit up to liftoff.
And so it's great to see Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov here in suits that are looking good.
There's Shannon Walker with the two crew members laying out the rules to a card game. Crew 9 leaving the suit-up room and now on the move inside astronaut crew quarters. Nick Hague, commander of Crew 9, with his crewmate Alexander Gorbanov.
So they'll have a chance here to say a few words with those who are closest to them.
This will begin a roughly 20-minute drive with a full security escort across NASA's Kennedy Space Center.
You can see them doing the SpaceX flight suit lean back.
Walking the crew access arm.
Crew have ingress the capsule.
Side hatch is closed.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Ignition full power. And liftoff of Crew 9. Go SpaceX, go Falcon, go NASA.
Liftoff of Crew 9, now soaring to the International Space Station.
1 Alpha.
6, 1, Gulf nominal.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Those 9 Merlin engines now providing 1.7 million pounds of thrust, propelling Falcon 9 and Crew 9 and continuing to get good calls from teams here on the ground.
Today marks the beginning of yet another incredible journey from Axiom Space and SpaceX as we lead the way in expanding access to low Earth orbit for all of humanity. You are looking at a live shot of the Falcon 9 rocket and Dragon spacecraft that will carry the next 4 private astronauts to the International Space Station in just over 3 hours from now. To everyone around the globe tuning in, hello and welcome to the live launch webcast for the Axiom Mission 2, or as we call it, AX2. My name is Duke Brady, and I'm a multimedia specialist with Axiom Space based out of Houston, Texas.
And I'm Kate Tice, Quality Systems Engineering Manager here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Duke, it's so good to have you and the Axiom teams with us today.
Very excited.
Today's mission is a pretty cool milestone for SpaceX. AX2 is our 10th human spaceflight mission overall and our 9th human spaceflight mission to the orbiting laboratory since we started flying people back in 2020 with NASA's Demo 2 mission. It also marks SpaceX's second human spaceflight mission this year, following the NASA Crew 6 launch in March to the International Space Station. The AX2 crew will be joining Expedition 69 and Dragon Endeavour, all still currently on station. As we count down today's scheduled liftoff, we'll be keeping you updated on the status of the crew, launch vehicle, systems, weather, and all the technical aspects of launch. And in between, we'll be taking you behind the scenes of the AX2 mission, what led up to this moment, and what to expect during the course of this 10-day mission.
For Axiom Space, this mission builds on the incredible success of our first all-private astronaut crew to the ISS last year, the AX-1 mission, and takes us one step closer to building and operating Axiom Station, the world's first private space station, which is currently under construction. AX-2 is the second of 4 missions SpaceX will launch for Axiom Space, and today's launch is the culmination of years of effort by teams at Axiom Space to expand the opportunities of private citizens and sovereign nations around the world so that they can partake in the incredible science, research, and STEAM education related activities in low Earth orbit. In fact, we just recently announced Axiom Space Access Program, which is designed to enable countries to realize long-term economic and scientific value in microgravity. So if you want to fly to space, or if your organization wants to conduct research and manufacturing efforts in microgravity, we have the teams that can help you develop your program. We believe that the commercial Space Shuttle Discovery in 1985, but they also represent the first Saudi national astronaut class, which we had the honor of helping select and train in preparation for this moment.
Really exciting stuff. Now, turning our attention to the crew, they are suiting up inside right behind those doors that you see there. That's SpaceX's Falcon support building.
Displays are configured for crew ingress, and advanced team work is complete and ready for crew arrival on schedule.
All right, just a call out there from our SpaceX core, letting all teams know on countdown that we're tracking on time. So that's great news to hear.
Great.
So yeah, they are getting suited up right now in preparation for their liftoff from that launch pad right there. That, of course, is the historic Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Once they arrive at the space station, the crew will spend 8 days living and working on board before returning to Earth.
Yes, and over the course of that 10-day journey, the AX2 crew will conduct a wide range of research, including several experiments that will help us understand more than ever about how our human bodies respond to microgravity. The data they'll collect will be critical to furthering human exploration of space, and along the way will inspire dreamers, thinkers, and explorers to follow in their footsteps.
Every human spaceflight crew is unique, with each astronaut bringing their own background and expertise to the mission. With that, let's introduce you to the AX2 crew.
The AX2 mission is commanded by retired NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. Born and raised in Beaconsfield, Iowa, she was inspired, along with the world, when we watched the Apollo 11 crew walk on the moon. She has since become the most experienced American astronaut and one of the most decorated. Whitson flew 3 long-duration missions to the ISS and has more cumulative time in space, 665 days, than any U.S. astronaut and more than any woman in the world. She has conducted 10 spacewalks with over 60 hours out in the vacuum of space and has performed hundreds of research experiments on board the ISS. Not only is she the commander for this mission, but Peggy also serves as the director of human spaceflight for Axiom Space.
The pilot for AX-2 is private astronaut John Schaffner. Born in Alaska and raised in Kentucky, Schaffner is a STEAM education advocate, business pioneer, and lifelong space enthusiast. A pilot since the age of 17, John has over 8,500 flight hours holding commercial, instrument, single-engine, and multi-engine ratings in land and sea aircraft, as well as helicopter. He also holds ratings in former military jets and high-performance radial engine aircraft. As an athlete, John has years of competitive experience in water skiing, cycling, whitewater kayaking, hang gliding, skydiving, and base jumping. John trained as the AX-1 backup pilot, and during this mission plans to invest a lot of his time in STEAM education activities aimed at empowering educators and inspiring teachers.
Representing the Saudi Space Commission and serving as a mission specialist, Ali Al-Karni was born in March 1992 in Sabt al-Alaya, Saudi Arabia. Ali is fluent in English as well as his native Arabic. And as an Air Force captain, Ali has 12 years of experience flying on multiple aircraft, primarily on the F-15SA in service to the Royal Saudi Air Force. Ali graduated with a Bachelor of Aerospace Science degree in 2013 from King Faisal Air Academy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Also representing the Saudi Space Commission and serving as a mission specialist, Rayana Barnawi was born in September 1988 in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Rayana has a master's degree in biomedical sciences from Al Faisal University in Riyadh, and also has a bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences from Otago University in Dunedin, New Zealand. If that wasn't enough knowledge, she is fluent in English and Turkish, as well as native Arabic. She has been a research lab technician since 2013 in the Stem Cell and Tissue Reengineering Program at King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center located in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
There you have it, the AX-2 crew. This really is an amazing group of people who have spent months preparing for this moment. We are already beyond proud of them and can't wait to see them in space.
At the moment, they should be making their final preparations inside our Falcon support building, and then soon they'll be making their first public appearance, fully suited and ready to fly. They should be walking out of those doors here in just a couple of minutes.
Yes, absolutely. But, you know, as excited as we are for this crew and their launch, there have been entire communities of loved ones, both friends and family, around the world who have been looking forward to this moment for quite some time, actually. So to Peggy, John, Ali, and Rayana, here are a few words from those who love you to help mark this occasion.
Hey, John, just wanted to take a second and give you a big shout out and tell you how proud we are that you're representing Middlesbrough and all of us on your mission to the International Space Station. We want to say thank you for allowing us to be part of your experience and taking us beyond the crater.
John, have fun, Godspeed.
Have fun.
Going to outer space. I am so fired up for you. You have no idea. Wish you the best of luck, and please, please do send me a postcard from up there.
Congratulations. I'm so excited for you, John. Woo! Excellent. Good job.
I wish you the best of luck. I don't know who these people are, but they will also want to wish you a safe and excellent mission. Enjoy and say hi to the boys from all of us.
Yes. Bye.
Good luck.
Hey, boy. Tell the skies. A new star is rising. An angel with a beauty ever so shiny. A blessing that showers and glow. Go out there and be the light.
Such a sweet insight into all that support and all those friends and family.
Super touching.
That's great. The entire Axiom Space team and all of our partners truly appreciate and are humbled by the worldwide interest and support for this historic flight today. As the crew wraps up their preparations inside the Falcon support building, let's provide a bit of an overview of the operations for today. It's been a pretty busy morning already for the AX2 crew. They woke up at about 9 a.m. Eastern, had their first medical checks of the day, and then shared a meal with their quarantine support staff. At 12:20 Eastern, they departed the quarantine facility and flew to Kennedy Space Center for a special moment with family and friends at the tarmac of the KSC launch and landing facility. This event also marked the formal handoff of the crew to SpaceX for today's launch.
Around T-minus 3 hours and 50 minutes, the crew arrived at the suit-up room and began putting their suits on. Right around then, we also had the crew pre-launch briefing, and that's where we share weather and launch details and basically give them their tablets, which they get to bring with them during flight. And all of that brings us to where we currently are, suit up. We are awaiting for them to make their appearance, but yeah, there's been a lot of activity.
Absolutely. And we know at about T-minus 3 hours and 25 minutes, the crew began suiting up. And once that process is complete, they'll exit the Falcon support building and get into their Teslas. We will have 2 astronauts in each of the Teslas, led by a support vehicle.
After that, it's a short drive to the launch pad, and once they arrive, the crew will ascend the fixed service structure in an elevator up to the 255-foot level. That's the structure you see there on your screen to the right of the rocket. The crew will then take the stairs up the last 10 feet, where they will stop and make one final phone call before walking down that crew access arm to the White Room. The White Room is their last stop before climbing into the spacecraft, a process known as crew ingress. During ingress, the SpaceX team will run a series of checks to ensure the suits, seats, and vehicle interactions are all functioning properly. After all the vehicle and crew checkouts are completed, the SpaceX closeout team will close Dragon's side hatch and depart the pad. At about T-minus 40 minutes, the crew access arm will retract away, followed by the arming of the launch escape system. Once the arm is retracted and the escape system is armed, propellant loading will begin on Falcon 9. At T-minus 5 minutes, Dragon will be configured for what we call terminal count. This is when Dragon's onboard computers take control of the spacecraft. And finally, the moment we're all waiting for, T0, Dragon and Falcon will lift off from pad 39A. Roughly 12 minutes after liftoff, Falcon will separate from Falcon 9's second stage and spend the next 16 hours making its way to the International Space Station.
Good afternoon. I'm John Innsbrucker, Falcon 9 Principal Integration Engineer here at SpaceX. We're currently at T-minus 3 hours, 13 minutes, and 18 seconds, and everything looks good for an on-time launch later today. Now, as Kate mentioned, the crew received a weather briefing just at T-minus 4 hours. Now, the good news is the probability of violating launch conditions has decreased since yesterday. We're down to only a 25% chance of a violation today. The main constraint we're tracking is upper altitude anvil clouds. The ground level winds are not a concern. We're up to about maybe 17, 18 miles an hour. The upper level wind shear also is expected to be low, but as we get later in the afternoon here in Florida, the upper altitude winds could blow some of the clouds inland over the launch site and the ascent trajectory. We are, of course, tracking weather all along the ascent and recovery corridors today, and we'll keep you posted as we continue to monitor those environments. But currently, ascent weather looks good. Now, at pad 39A, as you can see on your monitor, Falcon 9 is powered up. Engine checkouts were performed overnight. Pressurization of the gas storage tanks on the Falcon 9 completed about T-minus 4.5 hours. Now, at T-minus 2 hours, Falcon will begin its final checks for launch. There will also be a communication check with the crew coming up at about T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes. And of course, propellant loading will begin at T-minus 35 minutes. Now, as with all of our launches to the International Space Station, we have an instantaneous launch window at 5:37 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time, or 21 hours, 37 minutes Universal Time. If for whatever reason we are not able to launch today, our next opportunity will be just under 24 hours later on Monday.
There on your screen. As a reminder, this is SpaceX's 10th mission flying people since 2020, which is incredible to think about, and our second of 4 missions for Axiom.
That's right, very exciting for us. Well, speaking of milestones and special moments, I wanted to take a moment to highlight a tradition we started at Axiom Space when the AX-1 crew went on their mission and has continued with this crew. A few weeks ago, just before the crew headed to quarantine, we held our Stepping into Space ceremony. Teams across the Axiom family gathered at our Axiom engineering facility and joined with the AX2 crew to celebrate not just the ending of their training, but also that important pivot to what we call the operational stage of their mission. Here is a quick recap of that moment.
We're about to launch to the International Space Station for this incredible mission. This is a delineation. Everything before was training and preparation, and now we're in operation.
AX2 represents a major step for us. Our last mission was 3 individuals who flew and did remarkable research on orbit. Now we have a combination of individual and a country that's going to fly with us. I mean, this is what we're all about. This is the global outreach that this company has. We're making history. Here they are, the AX2 crew.
Wow, we are really excited to be here today. I think it's so important that you're here because without you and all your contributions, all your hard work, your dedication, we wouldn't be up here ready for spaceflight, and we are.
To continue to celebrate this moment, one of the things that we did a scan of the right foot of each of these astronauts, an homage to the Apollo program and the images that you see from the first launch of the moon. And there is a plaque.
This is only the first class of Saudi astronauts back home, so we're just looking for more and more to join.
That little voice inside you is real. Listen to it.
My father used to share with me a part of a poet he likes. It says, "He who fears to climb mountains will forever live among pits." I would say to everyone, just find your mountain, keep climbing. It's not going to be an easy ride. You might stumble and fall, but always have the passion and the thought of what it's going to feel like once you are on top of the mountain and looking down. I'm sure it's going to be an amazing view and experience.
Live outside your comfort zone. You're capable of so much more than you might believe. So try things that you think you might not succeed at because you'll find out that you really are much more capable.
One more round of applause for our crew for the AX2 mission. Woo! Go AX2! What an amazing tradition that you guys have started. I love that.
It's so great to see that Axiom family specifically come together and support this crew, get their big final send-off for all of that preparation they've been doing.
Now, we are just moments away from seeing the crew for the first time today. This is a live view outside of our Falcon support building located...
Core countdown, suit donning and checkouts are complete. Stand by for walkout. We're on schedule.
All right. Almost perfectly on cue there. That was the SpaceX core calling out on our countdown nets to let the integrated teams know that all of our crew members are in their suits. They went through the appropriate checks and fit-ups, and we should be seeing them walk out these doors any minute now.
I love the serendipity of that moment. That's going to be the rest of the day, right? Everything's right on cue.
Yeah, I like it.
This is certainly a big moment for them. That moment at Axiom where we have this stepping to space send-off is a big one, going from that training to operational phase. But this might be the next big one, the next big step for their mission.
Now, we have seen the crew in their suits, in the days leading up to launch. We had a dress rehearsal a couple days ago. I guess that was Friday. And so we've seen the crew walk through and rehearse all of this, but this will be the first time that we're seeing them on the day they get to go to space.
I have to imagine it feels completely different. But I also think maybe their training has made this sort of normal. They're in the mode. They have the muscle memory at this point. Something's familiar, but some things have to also be a little heightened today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now there we can see the 3 Teslas that will take them up a short distance. It's a little bit less than a half mile from those doors to the elevator doors at the base of pad 39A. We will see Commander Peggy Whitson and pilot John Schaffner together in one of those black Teslas, while the mission specialist Ali Al-Karni and Rayana Barnawi will be partnered in another. So, like we said, it's a short drive. They could walk it, but I've done that walk. It's not great, especially, it's pretty warm in Florida already and a little humid. So we want to keep everybody cool and comfortable. So they're going to hop in these vehicles and head up.
Launch director and countdown net. The crew is beginning their walkout to drive to the pad at this time.
All right, it sounds like we should be seeing our AX2 crew any moment now, coming through those double doors that you see on your screen.
Now, because we here in this location, we are inside the blast area, so no family or media are allowed here, but certainly an emotionally significant moment, and we're...
Aha! And here they are, our AX2 crew. This is very exciting. This is our first live look at the AX2 crew suited up for their mission to the International Space Station. On your far left, you see Rayana Barnawi, followed by Peggy Whitson, then John Schaffner, then Ali Al-Karni. Wow, incredible. We've got a great group wave there. The team unifying for their first big step before they get in those Teslas to ride to their vehicle.
I love this view that we have here inside the vehicles. We actually get to really get an up-close look at the excitement on their faces. Right now, they are, of course, going to buckle in, and they're also going to plug in the umbilicals, the umbilicals that flow cool nitrox, nitrogen-oxygen mixture air into the suit. So it helps keep them comfortable as they are making that short distance up to the pad.
Right, because as you said, they are in Florida. It can be a little warm and a little humid there. So any way to make this crew comfortable is going to be better. It's going to help them be in the right mindset and appreciate this moment. You see those gull-wing doors are closing now. I do love this camera view. It reminds me of like a auto karaoke or taxi karaoke, whatever that was. And that reminds me, they do have a special playlist that I think they're playing right now for their short drive. Don't think we'll get to hear.
It looks like fist bumps and maybe some dancing to the music as well.
Yeah.
That's our Commander Peggy Whitson on the far left and pilot John Schaffner there to her left, our right center, I guess you should say. And then mission specialists Ali Al-Karni and Rayana Barnawi on the right-hand side.
What a great moment there where you saw each pair of crew members sort of grasping hands, doing fist bumps, so kind of having another level of realization for this step in their missions. It's so wonderful to see that. Love to see the teamwork too. This is a very special moment for Peggy, but thinking about her, she actually had her first mission to space on STS-11, which launched from this very pad 39A on June 5th, 2002, just shy of 21 years ago. She would have been transported out on this very stretch of road and ridden the same set of elevators to reach the Space Shuttle Endeavour. Now today, just everything else is basically new. The suits, the rocket, obviously all of those things are new, but it's pretty fascinating to think of this throwback. And actually, here's a photo of then rookie astronaut Peggy Whitson.
Wow. I love that.
That's incredible. There she is in the White Room. And actually, as this crew rides out to their rocket, their commander, Peggy Whitson, wanted to share a special message with them and to each of you who have helped make today possible.
As I get ready for spaceflight, I want to say thank you to everyone who's contributed. I know there's so many of you out there that are helping to make each and every piece come together. The engineers that design things, the welders that put things together, the instructors that teach me how to operate this really very complex piece of hardware and how it's all integrated together by all the software engineers. And then we have a ground team that's helping us. And we have ground teams all over the world that are helping us be successful on our missions. And every one of you does a tremendous job to make spaceflight possible. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
What a fantastic message from Peggy Whitson, from STS-111 to AX2. What a career, what a phenomenal set of achievements.
You know, I remember the day, excuse me, that Axiom announced that she would be commanding this mission, and it was such an incredible moment because she really is one of the legends of NASA, and I was just so excited to see that she was going to be flying in a SpaceX Dragon. So what an exciting opportunity.
Absolutely.
Once again, those live views coming to us from inside the Teslas as the crew members of AX2 are pulling up to their rocket. They're now getting closer and closer to Pad 39A, where Falcon 9 and our Dragon Freedom capsule await to take them to the International Space Station. You know, the core
crew have arrived at the pad.
There's that call out, just letting everybody know on countdown that the crew has arrived to the pad, as we can see.
We have Peggy Whitson and John Schaffner. They've exited their vehicles first.
This is one of my favorite moments that we have during the launch sequence. Is right there it is.
Lean back.
The lean back, and you know, they have to. The vehicle stands so tall there on top of the launch mount.
We'll probably say this throughout the broadcast, but they've seen the rocket before. They've been in it for dry drafts. It's got to look different on today, this day of launch.
Another fun fact about those elevators, the levels of the fixed service structure are not marked by the level number that it is. It's the height in feet that they are ascending to. So the AX2 crew is going up to the 255-foot level, and they will ride up, and that then, after they exit, will take a short 10-foot stairs up to the next level. The difference being is basically the difference in height between the shuttle access arm and the Falcon 9 access arm. Beautiful view there of the backside of the transporter erector. That is the structure that we use for integration of the vehicle, as well as transportation of the integrated vehicle to the launch pad. And of course, we roll it up horizontally and then lift it to the vertical launch position, you know, within, depending on the mission, days or hours prior to liftoff.
There you see Ali and Rihanna doing an excellent lean back for that view. You can see the excitement, hands clapping.
As we mentioned before, they have rehearsed this previously in our dry dress rehearsal on Friday. They suited up, they rode out to the pad, they got in the spacecraft. So they have technically done all of this once before, because, you know, in spaceflight, we love to rehearse and practice everything. And really, like, the moment for them to look up and realize that these are their last steps on Earth for a few days must be such an incredible moment. You know, the day that they actually get to go to space. It's a moment that they've all trained for a very, very long time for.
Absolutely. It's so exciting. You see now in your screen, that's Peggy and John. I believe they're using the phone to make their phone calls before launch, the last calls.
Now, for those of you looking at the view here and wondering what those arrows are for, those arrows point the direction towards safety in the event that the crew needs to leave the area quickly. They just look down and they're able to follow those chevrons over to the escape pods, basically. They are baskets on a zip line that allow them to leave the tower if necessary. It's a little counterintuitive because they're walking opposite of the arrows, which of course makes sense because they're going to space, not away.
Rihanna and Ali have gotten to the top of the stairs. They will have their turn to use the phone for their last calls.
That's a pretty cool view there. We see them, they're just in the fixed service structure tower, not yet going across the crew access arm. That access arm, of course, is what connects the tower to the launch vehicle. We should be able to get a really great view of them as they go down the access arm, but looks like everybody's enjoying the view, as they should be.
Yeah.
And as they await their opportunity to make their final phone call.
Speaking of paths, this is the last section of their path before they ingress the vehicle, but Ali and Rayan actually reported last August to Houston to start training, and this crew has 700 to 1,000 hours of training total by the time they start their operational phase of the mission. It's no easy task.
Now, the folks that are dressed in the all-black bodysuits, those are members of the SpaceX suit and closeout team. So these are the SpaceX employees that will be assisting the crew through their egress and suit leak checks. For FOD, which is foreign object debris, something that we want to avoid at all costs in the spaceflight industry. We make sure that everyone, all the the personnel in this part of the phase are preventing FOD, and that is why we see them dressed in those bunny suits like we do.
Coming down the arm now, you see here's Commander Peggy Whitson and pilot John Schaffner taking a nice look at their rocket through the window there.
Smiles.
Yeah.
It's incredible, to see someone like Peggy that has been to space so much, one of the most decorated NASA astronauts ever, to still be so excited. It's really heartwarming. We see here now that Peggy Whitson and John Schaffner have now arrived to the White Room. This is a great shot of where they will get to actually, right on the wall, they're going to add their signature to our basically wall of fame.
Everyone, crew at the White Room.
Everyone that flies on a Dragon mission has the opportunity to add their signature. We can see them adding their signature there to the black SpaceX logo, joining the names of the Axiom 1 crew as well as the Inspiration 4 crew.
As I understand, that Sharpie is part of the protocol. You have to have that Sharpie at the ready because it's a really special moment for the crew.
Absolutely. We can see the crew members, the closeout members that are assisting the crew with their ingress process. We can see that they're holding tablets. That is where they are tracking and following along with our electronic procedures, which we call EPROCs. And those EPROCs list out every single step that each person has to carry out in order to enable a successful liftoff. And of course, we have an instantaneous liftoff window today as we are going to the International Space Station. So it's really important to keep tabs on who's doing what and how much time we have left in each activity. We do build in margin into the schedule so that if one thing takes a couple minutes longer, it's okay. We build in a little bit of flexibility there. But those tablets allow the crew to follow along. And one of those steps in the EPROCs for the advanced team, which is the team of SpaceX employees that arrive there to the pad in advance of the crew to prepare for crew arrival. One of those things is to make sure that there is a Sharpie in the White Room. We can see there one of the SpaceX closeout crew team members assisting.
Core on countdown, ingress started.
We want to make sure that nobody bumps the helmet or the side hatch as they enter the vehicle. We can now see pilot John Schaffner in the seat on the left and Commander Peggy Whitson in the seat on the right. The seats that they're sitting in utilize a 5-point safety harness, so it's a little bit more advanced than the seatbelt that we have in our automobiles here on Earth.
You have John and Peggy in the vehicle. Fun little note about John Schaffner. He's going to be the first Alaskan to fly to space. He was born in Fairbanks, Alaska. I've spent a lot of time there from my biology background, and it's an extreme environment. So just being from Alaska, I feel like is training enough to prepare for space.
Alaska is cold, space is cold.
Yeah, there you
they
go.
Go together. We can see there our mission specialists, Rayana Barnawi and Ali Al-Karni, still finishing up the final steps before walking down the crew access arm. They are working with the SpaceX closeout team members to do the final checks and, of course, some waves. Now entering that crew access arm and making their way down to Dragon Freedom.
Smiles and waves. All right, thumbs up from the KSA mission specialists, Rayana Barnawi and Ali Al-Karni, as they enter the white room and likely go straight to signing that SpaceX logo next to the AX-1 crew and joining their crewmate signatures. It's really incredible for this new era of space travel to be forming, where we're going to have sovereign nation representation on that signature wall. It's just really exciting to see the evolution and change of things here as we grow commercial spaceflight.
Absolutely. Space for all.
Yeah. You mentioned this closeout crew. It's really, as Peggy said in that send-off video too, it's really phenomenal to think about the size of these teams and every pair of hands that gets put on these mission preparations and to make this crew perform their mission successfully. It's incredible to think about all of those people involved. It's as though they're not traveling just for themselves or even their countries, but like you said, it's space for all. They're traveling for all of humanity.
Once again, we can see the tablets being utilized for the closeout team members to follow along with the procedures step by step. They are also marking off when a step is completed and essentially just keeping track of what is remaining, what open work remains. We can see here they're going through and doing the final zip-ups of the gloves. You know, for comfort reasons, for comfort reasons, we don't make them do final suit up, I should say final suit up with all the zippers and whatnot, so that they can still be comfortable as they're riding up and making their phone calls. And this is the final check to ensure that everything is locked in place with those zippers and fasteners. We can see now that pilot John Schaffner on the left and Commander Peggy Whitson on the right are in their seats, getting those final strap in with that seatbelt. We can see that they have tablets on their legs, which allow them to also follow along with the same procedures step by step.
And there goes Ali Al-Karni ingressing the vehicle with some words of encouragement from his crewmate, Rayana Barnawi, and as she initiates her ingress.
So as they're stepping through this side hatch, it's important to note that they won't go through this side hatch again until they're back on Earth. When they are ingressing and egressing the International Space Station, we actually use the forward hatch located at the top of the Dragon spacecraft to dock with the International Space Station. So the next time that they go through this side hatch will be when they are done and they are on a recovery vessel in either the Gulf or Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, we're getting our first looks of our full crew seated inside the Dragon. On the far left, you have Rayana Barnawi, followed by John Schaffner, Peggy Whitson, and Ali Al-Karni. Mission specialists sitting on the far left and the far right. Pilot John Schaffner on the left in the middle, and Peggy Whitson, commander, on that right middle seat. Great side-by-side shot of the rocket Dragon capsule on the left, crew on the right.
We can see there, in addition to the tablets that the crew uses to follow along with everything that's going on, they also, I just love this view. This is coming to us from our drone that is circling pad 39A. You can really appreciate, one, what a beautiful day to go to space. I love it whenever we can see this coastline come into view. But yeah, just a beautiful pad shot of 39A. Of course, this is where many of the shuttle missions launched from, but this is also the Apollo 11 launch site as well. So it's amazing to see this new era of spaceflight continuing from a site that is so historic and carries a lot of good memories for many people. As you mentioned before, Peggy Whitson having flown from this pad herself on a shuttle mission. So I just think that's so amazing that we're able to continue spaceflight from such an important piece of ground.
Absolutely. And in thinking about all of the science that's going to be performed on this AX-2 mission, it made me look at the calendar and actually see that Space Lab was launched from this same pad 50 years ago to this year, so 1973. And that was, of course, a huge progressive step in doing scientific research in space. And so we have this really cool full circle moment where we're initiating a big step in commercial spaceflight that's really going to progress the research that's done in low Earth orbit, tying it back to the same pad where Peggy launched, and even before that where Skylab, one of our influential science components of space exploration, was launched from as well. Really cool history, like you're saying.
This here an exterior view of the Crew Access Arm and Dragon Freedom. Well, today we are carrying 4 people to the space station. Dragon can actually seat up to 7. The additional 3 crew members would be located basically under where the 4 seats that we use as we see today in lieu of cargo. So underneath the astronauts, as we see now, there is actually cargo located underneath them. Within that cargo will be things that they use, like food and water, as well as the clothes that they will get to change into once they are able to take off or doff their spacesuits. Once they reach orbit, they'll be able to take off the spacesuits and change into other clothes and basically sleep in that while they make their way to the International Space Station. And we can see here the tablets that they follow along with the procedures on the left leg, but on the right leg, we see another rectangular shape. That is the connection point for the umbilical, and that is where the basically the interface is for flowing, again, some more of that cooled nitrox, which is a nitrogen-oxygen mixture. That air gets flowed into the suits to help keep them comfortable. It's the same stuff that scuba divers use in their breathing tanks. The umbilical is also what connects the electrical and communication and avionics. So that's how we basically get telemetry to and from the suit, and in addition to those communication packages. Now, the seats they are sitting in are custom sized for each astronaut. So if you think of the human body, and some people might have longer legs and shorter torsos, and vice versa, where they might have longer torsos and shorter legs. Thought we were going to get some communications there. Sounds like we had some in-capsule audio, so that's good to hear starting to come through. But yeah, all the length of the seat that they are sitting in, as well as the length of the footrest and the length of the armrest, are all sized appropriately for each astronaut. So really helps to make sure that they stay comfortable as well as safe through all phases of the mission. Their spacesuits are also custom sized. And they actually come here to Hawthorne not only for hours and hours of training on procedures and operations, but they also come on site here to try on the suits and make sure that everything is fitting well, make sure that as they go through, the motions of executing, something while they're on orbit, making sure that everything is super comfortable and nothing is rubbing in the wrong places.
Since the beginning of the space race in the 1960s, a custom patch has been used to represent and identify individual missions and their crew. It is also a long-held custom that the crew influence or outright design their own patch, injecting it with symbolism and personal elements to commemorate their journey. This crew has continued this long-standing tradition with their official AX2 mission patch. Take a look. The AX2 mission patch highlights the beauty of space, hope for the future, and the important role of the ISS to unite the best aspects of humanity. Shown prominently are the mission name, AX2, the family names of the crew members, and the flags of the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the two nations represented on board today's flight. There are 5 shapes drawn as constellations, and these represent the crew's intention to focus on inspiration, education, and teaching through STEAM education initiatives. And so there's a constellation for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. The arched path leading from the Earth to space is colored lavender, which is a culture significant in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, symbolizing hospitality. That arched path and color also reflect KSA's desire to be part of the space sector and position itself as a contributor to the global space community. Then, naturally, the space station is central to the image as the destination of this crew, while Earth is featured with prominent horizon lines symbolizing optimism, hope, and inspiration. Just as you see this mission patch worn by the crew on their flight suits, this patch is currently adorning the walls of Axiom Space's Mission Control in Houston and is placed in a position of honor everywhere this crew is being supported for the duration of their mission.
We can see live views there inside of Dragon Freedom. Now, this capsule that they are flying in is a reused capsule. It has been to space before. Additionally, Falcon 9 is also a reusable vehicle. It's the world's first orbital class reusable rocket. And while today marks the first flight for this rocket, it will be the second flight for the Dragon spacecraft. Reusability is a big deal, not just for us at SpaceX, but also for the future of spaceflight. Reusing hardware, similar to how airlines reuse aircraft, allows us to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which, of course, in turn drives down the cost of space access. Imagine if you had to fly on a brand new airplane every time you took a flight. Most people would not be able to afford that plane ticket. In the same way, a fully and rapidly reusable launch system is the key to becoming a multiplanetary species. To date, SpaceX has completed 39 Dragon missions, including 36 visits to the International Space Station, and 18 of those 36 missions have actually been on reflown Dragons, which is pretty awesome. As you've heard me mention before, the Dragon capsule flying today, named Freedom, will be making its second trip to space. It previously supported the NASA Crew 4 mission in April 2022, so just over a year ago. Now, as for our launch vehicle, the Falcon 9 rocket has completed 224 total launches, and 70% of those have been on reflown rockets. The booster supporting today's mission will be lifting off for the first time, as you might be able to tell by the fact that that first stage is shiny and white. The way that I often, tell people is if the paint matches the second stage, it's a new rocket. Now, speaking of firsts, today marks the first time that we're landing Falcon 9 back on land for a crew mission. Previous crew missions landed on a drone ship out in the Atlantic Ocean. So we actually see a live view now of LZ-1. That is the intended landing destination for the booster today. Landing back on land has a lot of benefits. It eliminates the need for our recovery team to be stationed out at sea for days and improves our turnaround time to get Falcon 9 ready to fly again. So I also personally love the land landings because the Space Coast can actually see and hear the booster return to LZ-1. So super exciting.
It's just under 2 hours, 36 minutes to the launch of Axiom 2. As you've seen, the 4-person crew is in the Dragon spacecraft. We're preparing for the first of a series of communication checks. These checks will be with the SpaceX core, and they verify the crew connections in Dragon through an umbilical that remains hooked up to the capsule until liftoff. As I said, the comm checks are going to be with Core. That's a member of the Dragon Ops team, and that operations team is located here in the Mission Control Center at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. The Falcon 9 and Dragon launch teams are located in Firing Room 4 at Kennedy Space Center. Now, next activities for the crew, once we get through that initial set of comm checks, we're going to be watching the seat rotation into the launch position. We've also got a suit leak check for several minutes, make sure everything is buttoned up and tight. And then we also have additional communications checks. These will be through RF antennas and NASA's Tracking and Data Relay System, or you may hear it referred to as TDRS for short, and those will be comm checks with the Dragon team. Now, currently, the flight hardware Falcon 9 and Dragon launch teams continue to monitor the vehicles. We're not working any significant issues at this time. We are continuing to just watch the weather. It's Florida, it's late afternoon. Ground level continues to look good, winds are low, and we've got nice looking skies there on the camera view on the left. We are watching upper altitude winds in case some of the anvil clouds do drift over the launch site or the ascent trajectory in the last hour. Now, for upper altitude winds, SpaceX uses a Doppler radar to study wind direction and speed. And that allows the SpaceX structures and control engineers to calculate loads on the vehicle and verify that we're good to fly. The Space Force range releases balloons for us, and that gets low altitude wind data. That supports Dragon's contingency launch commit criteria. But right now, T-minus 2 hours and 34 minutes. Everything continues to look good. Next up, we're waiting for comm checks. We see the crew right there. Make sure that their connections through the seats, through the umbilical are good. They'll talk to the core, and then we'll take it from there with the remaining series of checkouts of comms, seat rotation, and the suit leak checks. A minute ago, we saw that live view of landing zone 1. There's the crew. Waves all around. The SpaceX support team is backing out of the capsule right now as we get ready for comm checks. Bigger thing is we'll then go into seat rotation, so we want to make sure everybody's out of the way, clear the seats, make sure everything underneath the seats are all stowed for flight and ready to go. We talked about landing zone 1, showed you a live view a few minutes ago. We're hoping to get a nice view of the first stage when it comes back to Earth. About 8.5 minutes after launch, we ought to see that coming back down into that landing zone 1 view. Right now, just waiting for the word from the crew that they're ready to begin their communications checks. Coming up on 2 hours, 32 minutes to launch. On the Falcon 9 side currently, the chief engineer is mostly just going around the room, checking with the SpaceX Falcon engineers. They're continuing to top off gas pressure in the helium supply that's used to repressurize first and second stages as we head to space. The attitude control system, gas supplies, the landing leg supplies. We're at pressure. We just top it off a little bit as we continue through the countdown. Other than that, nothing significant on the Falcon 9 right now. Everybody's mostly just looking over the data, watching their systems. Our next major activity on Falcon 9 will actually occur at about T-minus 1 hour and 10 minutes. That's when we're going to begin to bleed in the fuel into the Merlin engine chambers, actually into the jacket where it's used to cool the nozzles as we head out into space. So that'll be our next major activity. We have also done flight termination system checkouts a couple hours ago. Everything looks good there. And the view you can see right now at 39A, Falcon 9, fairly quiet at the moment. Dragon also having the more activity as the crew has ingressed. And right now we're getting ready to begin checks between Dragon and the ground.
We're now T-minus 2 hours, 30 minutes, and 42 seconds until liftoff of Axiom 2. Heading to the International Space Station, we have a T0 time of 5:37 p.m. Eastern Time, 2:37 p.m. Pacific Time. As John mentioned, and as you can see on screen, weather's cooperating at the moment. We can see the exterior of the capsule there. This is actually a great shot because not only can you see the service section, which is where the crew is, you can also see another great view of the trunk. This is where we are able to put unpressurized cargo, and that trunk is the part that will be jettisoned before the crew actually return to Earth. Great view coming to us from our helicopter circling the pad. You can also see below the trunk the white second stage, below that the black inner stage where we have the grid fins attached, and then below that the white first stage. We are standing by for communications checks with the crew. So it will be a series of checks to ensure that all seats are able to communicate with the teams, both at the Launch Control Center in Florida, as well as here in Mission Control in Hawthorne, California. After we get through comm checks, we will perform leak checks on the suits. That's important, just to ensure that all of those zippers on the suits and the fasteners are all in the in their final position, they're closed, and we pressurize the suit in order to basically test that it can hold that pressure over a period of time. In the event of an egress scenario, or excuse me, not egress, of a launch escape scenario after liftoff, the spacesuit actually functions as a mini spaceship within the spaceship. It's able to hold that pressure while the crew return to Earth. Once those suit leak checks are complete, the closeout team will then close the side hatch. As I mentioned before, the side hatch is the door that they use to go in and out of the capsule while they are on Earth. The hatch that they use while they are on station is actually the forward hatch, which is located under the nose cone, which you can distinguish there at the very top of the Dragon capsule, the pointy part that has that diagonal line that indicates where the nose cone is, and that will rotate back. It'll open up and expose the forward hatch, and that's what the Dragon capsule uses to autonomously dock with the International Space Station. So once that side hatch is closed by the closeout team here on the ground,
SpaceX Dragon, comm check from seat 2.
Loud and clear, Peggy, from SpaceX. How me?
We have you loud and clear.
So it sounds like these comm checks.
All right, good afternoon. Please let us know when you get to step 1.3 and are ready for umbilical comm checks.
Wilco. And SpaceX Dragon, we're at step 1.3, ready for a comm check.
SpaceX copies. Stand by for umbilical comm checks.
Welcome.
Great view of the Axiom 2 crew there as we are standing by for those comm checks.
Commander, pilot, MS1, MS2, comm check.
Commander has you loud and clear.
Pilot, loud and clear. MS1, loud and clear.
MS2, loud and clear.
And core, loud and clear. Umbilical comm check complete. Please report when ready for seat rotation.
All right, all good news there. All those comm checks checked out, and we are now...
SpaceX Dragon, we are ready for seat rotation.
SpaceX copies. Will report when initiating.
As the name indicates, these seats are going to rotate back into the launch position. This will enable the crew to have easier access to those crew displays located above their heads.
Dragon SpaceX initiating seat rotation.
Dragon copies.
We can see those seats now rotating back into the launch position.
On the left.
This moment must feel like that moment on a roller coaster when you're in position to go.
We are at T-minus 2 hours.
SpaceX, seats are in the launch position.
Dragon copies.
Okay, a comm there confirming that the seat rotation has been completed. We are at T-minus 2 hours and 22 minutes and 6 seconds from liftoff of the AX-2 mission from Kennedy Space Center in Florida, carrying 4 Axiom astronauts, Peggy Whitson, John Schaffner, Ali Al-Karni, and Rihanna Barnawi, aboard the Crew Dragon spacecraft. It's been a very exciting day so far. The crew shifted their sleep cycle to match that of the International Space Station and are currently inside Dragon going through their pre-launch checklists.
As of now, the astronauts have already completed their comms checks. That helps to make sure that they can communicate with the teams on the ground. Their seats have rotated from upright to their reclined launch position, which allows them to see and access the display panels there above their head. Up next will be the leak checks to make sure their spacesuits are in proper working condition before liftoff and to do final inspection of the spacecraft. So at this point in time, we're going to stand by, await for those suit checks. We expect them to happen here in the next couple of minutes. After those are complete, the closeout team will be closing the side hatch for flight. That's one of the key...
Dragon SpaceX, you are go for Section 2 suit leak check preparation.
Copy, go Section 2, suit leak check preparation.
Once the suit leak checks are complete and the closeout team closes the side hatch for flight, things will start moving a lot quicker. The opportunity for going back and rechecking, everything is still, we're able to do that before the side hatch closes. So that's why we wait to get through the comm checks, the suit leak checks, the seat rotation. We wait to close the side hatch until all of those are complete, so that in the event that, for example, if a zipper isn't quite in place, one of the closeout team members can re-enter the capsule, help the crew member get that into place and re-perform the suit leak check, or whatever it might be. Now, after we get that side hatch closed, the closeout team will depart the pad, and then around T-minus 1 hour and 30 minutes, we'll do launch escape system checks. And then we fast forward to T-minus 42 minutes, and things really start happening in rapid succession.
SpaceX Dragon, tear is complete. We're ready for leak check.
Dragon copies and concurs. You are go for Section 3 suit leak check.
Copy. Go for Section 3 suit leak check.
All right, so that communication back and forth there between Commander Peggy Whitson and SpaceX Core, or Crew Operations and Resource Engineer, on that console today is Arthur Berrialt. That is the primary voice that we will be hearing communicating to the crew members. That back and forth just confirming that the crew is ready to go to march into that next step, which, as they said, would be the suit leak checks. Essentially, we inflate the suits to a certain pressure for a couple of minutes, and we monitor that pressure level during that time to basically ensure and check that we're not losing any pressure. If we see a pressure loss, that's an indication that something isn't quite fitting right. Maybe there's a little bit of FOD in the visor, so it's not closing completely, or the zipper might not be zipped up completely. So one of the closeout team members will go in and help resolve whatever is causing that. And then they, in that case, would re-perform the suit leak check. But when we did a dress rehearsal on Friday, we got to this step, and they breezed right through it.
Yeah.
So you can actually kind of see the crew there just resting pretty comfortably while these leak checks are underway. So suit leak checks are now underway. We're just holding that pressure and monitoring that pressure level in all 4 suits to ensure that there's no leakage. For those of you that have just recently joined us, we have Mission Specialist Rayana Barnawi on the left, the far left seat. That is seat number 4. And seat number 3 is Pilot John Schaffner. Next to him, Commander Peggy Whitson, and then on the far right in seat number 1, Ali Al-Karni. We can see the SpaceX closeout team there preparing for the side hatch closure, but like I said, we won't complete that until we have confirmation of 4 good suit leak checks. Now, the area that we see here, the white room, is environmentally controlled. That helps to ensure that Florida insects, humidity, none of that gets into the capsule. That we're able to maintain a clean environment.
You could see them inspecting with the light. You really want to go over that with a fine-tooth comb.
Dragon, we see 4 good suits.
SpaceX copies and concurs. 4 good suits. At this time, closeout team will perform final steps in preparation for side hatch closure. Proceed to section 4, side hatch close, and report when ready to close hatch.
Wilco for Dragon.
All right, good news there. We have 4 good suit leak checks. Closeout team now preparing to close the side hatch. Duke, as you mentioned, yeah, they are really inspecting that side hatch to ensure that we get a good seal there. Very similar to the suit leak checks that we just performed, we will do a leak check on that side hatch where we inflate the seal around the hatch. Again, to a certain pressure for a certain amount of time. We monitor that pressure for any decay or pressure loss. And
SpaceX Dragon, we are ready for the closeout team to close the hatch.
SpaceX copies.
I think that's a very polite way of saying it's time for them to go so we can go to space. As I mentioned before, the primary voice that we hear communicating with the crew is the SpaceX Core, which stands for Crew Operations Resource Engineer. That person on console, while it's not the same individual through all phases of flight, but that seat is there and it is filled by different individuals throughout the mission. And that is the primary communication to the crew. That person is responsible for updating them on statuses and confirming with the crew that they are ready to proceed to the next step, as we've been hearing them that back and forth this morning. Or I should say this afternoon now at this point. Once we get the side hatch closed, we can see that there's still a closeout team member there under their feet, kind of in that cargo location. It's kind of hard to visualize, but if you want to compare it between the view on the left and the view on that right, on the right-hand side, that closeout team member.
Dragon SpaceX, comm check over ground stations.
Dragon has you loud and clear over ground station.
Core loud and clear. Ground station comm check complete. Stand by for TDRS comm check.
We should be just a few minutes from side hatch closing, but until then, we still have a good view of the crew in the capsule with one of the closeout crew members in the lower part of the screen there. You see them working on their tablets that the crew has. They each have one. Nice view of the Dragon capsule on your left and some great weather out there.
We can see that final closeout crew member making the last preparations and now popping out. So they have now egressed and are back in that white room. As I was saying before, it's kind of hard to visualize if you've never been inside the Dragon capsule, you know, kind of the orientation of where the viewpoint is to the right. Imagine that the crew tablet that we see Peggy and John referencing and working off of is kind of around where those 2 dots are on the left-hand side of your screen, those 2 dots on the exterior of the Dragon capsule. You can kind of imagine if you were to draw a line between those 2 dots, that's roughly where the crew display panels are. And then the crew are essentially laying on their backs, or kind of on their backs, not completely, but they're laying on their backs underneath that. So when we saw that closeout team member there under their feet, if you imagine somebody kind of working in the area.
Dragon, SpaceX, Comcheck over TDRS.
Dragon has you loud and clear over TDRS.
Core, loud and clear. TDRS Comcheck complete. Stand by for Comchecks with DC, MD, and LD in the launch configuration.
Standing by.
Dragon, this is DC on countdown 1. Comcheck.
DC, we have you loud and clear.
DC, loud and clear. Stand by for Comchecks with MD.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1. Comcheck.
MD, we have you loud and clear on countdown 1.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for Comcheck over Dragon to ground. Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground. Comcheck.
MD on Dragon to ground, we have you loud and clear.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for Comchecks with LD.
Dragon, LD on countdown 1. Comcheck.
We have you loud and clear on countdown 1, LD.
LD is you loud and clear as well. Stand by for my Comcheck over Dragon to ground. Dragon, LD, Dragon to ground 1. Comcheck.
We have you loud and clear, LD.
LD also has you loud and clear.
Dragon, SpaceX, launch configuration, Comchecks complete.
Dragon copies.
All right, so we're finishing up with those Comchecks. And I want to point out for those that might be tuning in for the first time or might not be familiar with the structure of those Comchecks, that they are actually important. They do mean something. So when we hear, for example, we heard Dragon MD on countdown 1. That is a structure basically saying, hey, who they are calling. So the mission director or MD was hailing the Dragon capsule. So they say Dragon MD, then to identify who is hailing them, and then on the countdown net in which they are, or excuse me, and then the communication net that the loop that they are speaking from. And that's important whenever you have multiple loops and you want to know who's talking where. So in that instance, we heard, the mission director, who for today is Ken Gamerick, SpaceX mission director, basically, continuing with those communication checks. And once we have all of those wrapped up, we will be able to continue on, and that the next step would basically be to perform, close the side hatch and perform that leak check that we were talking about a little bit ago. Yeah, we can see those closeout team members there as they are standing by for the go to close the side hatch. As we saw earlier, they were inspecting the side hatch very carefully for any foreign object debris, which in the aerospace world is known as FOD, F-O-D. And we can see them there just doing their final team checks. You can see the crew there on the right-hand side of your screen following along with the procedures. They do not have games on their tablets, so that's a question I sometimes get. The tablets, as well as the crew display above John and Peggy's head, allows the crew to stay informed on what is currently happening as well as what will be upcoming. So as we said before, we should be wrapping up those communication checks, and then we will get the go to proceed with side hatch closure. And the other thing that we heard during those comm checks was somebody saying loud and clear. That is also an important structure to responding. You could have communication that is loud but garbled. Alternatively, you could have communication that is soft but clear and or crisp in the ear, and we want everybody to be able to hear it. So that's why you hear them say loud and clear, because that's basically confirming the volume as well as the crispness of the audio that is being received. Now, in the event that something was not loud and clear, we would be able to tweak it, perhaps the volume levels on the ground side and how they're being fed into the astronauts' ears, as they do have basically custom fit earbuds in their ears for those communication purposes. Some claps and waves. I have a feeling the closeout team is saying goodbye to the crew.
Yep.
Dragon SpaceX. Closeout team is taking final steps in preparation for side hatch closure. Stand by for transition to pad hatch closed. Ensure all items are secure from now through launch.
Copy. Closeout teams performing the final actions. We have secured all items prior to launch, and we're ready for the flight computer transition.
So great news there, as we suspected, the closeout team saying farewell and fair wishes to the Axiom 2 crew. They're now getting ready to close the side hatch. Once again, this room is environmentally controlled, so it helps keep out humidity, insects, which would be considered FOD, and ultimately just help keep that environment clean. We're now progressing with the side hatch closure. They're going to torque it shut. They will now attach equipment that will allow them to inflate the seal to pressurize, pressurize the seal around the side hatch. And as we mentioned before, very similar to the suit leak checks that are performed, that the seal will be inflated to a pressure that will be monitored over a few minutes, and basically monitoring to ensure that there is no loss of pressure, or also known as pressure decay. And if we did see a loss in pressure during this leak check, it would be an indication that
Dragon SpaceX closeout team has secured the side hatch and has started the side hatch leak check per 4.3.
Dragon copies. We'll follow along.
So if we were to see a pressure loss during this leak check, it would be an indication that something with the seal isn't sitting quite right, in which case the closeout team would be able to reopen the hatch, wipe it down, inspect it. Of course, whenever we are helping the crew, or rather the reason that we help the reason we help the crew get into or ingress the capsule is not only to help make sure that they don't injure themselves or they don't injure their suit. It's also to ensure that they don't accidentally bump that side hatch during that ingress process. We want to make sure that that everything is able to really keep that seal. For that reason, we actually put protective fixturing that is removed right before the side hatch closure. We put that protective fixture there to help ensure that that side hatch is covered during ingress. So the leak check is now underway. As I said before, we're going to hold this pressure for a couple of minutes and just monitor it for any pressure loss. For those of you that have just recently joined, we are now just under 2 hours until liftoff of Axiom 2. It will be heading to the International Space Station. We have a targeted T0 time of 5:37 p.m. Eastern Time, 2:37 p.m. Pacific. Weather continues to look really, really great. Almost picture perfect, I would say. Over the last 24 hours, we did see an improvement in our weather conditions, so something called the POV, or percentage of violation, which is basically our chances of violating one of the weather rules that exist and we have to follow for that liftoff time, and that percentage decreased to only 25%. So everything's still continuing to look good in terms of an on time that liftoff targeting 5:37 p.m. Eastern. So we are now undergoing the leak check of the side hatch. This side hatch will remain closed until the crew splashes down in 10 days from now, weather dependent. We can see there inside the white room as the closeout team is performing that leak check. This is such a great view because we saw the astronauts add their signatures to the wall there earlier right before they got into the Crew Dragon. This was a tradition that SpaceX started with the Demo 2 mission. NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley were the first to add their signatures to the white room wall. And of course, the Axiom 2 crew got to add their signatures along with the Axiom 1 signatures and Inspiration 4 there along the X that we see on the right-hand side.
It's great to think about the representation in all of those signatures, too. You have, of course, all of those NASA astronauts in various countries that are involved in that space program, and now with that SpaceX logo and the private astronauts that are going up, and now the sovereign nation companies or sovereign nations that will be joining for private launches like today with Axiom. It's really cool to see that diversity and that breadth of representation.
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, we are operating to a countdown today. That countdown helps ensure that all the teams are tracking to the same milestones for that T0 time. We are running with plenty of margin at this point in time. We are now awaiting the results of the side hatch leak check. Of course, we build margin into the timeline to allow us to reperform steps that might need to be done. So at this point in time, we've just been flying through all the milestones. So we are tracking with great margin at this point.
Okay, well, while we wait for results on that, we're going to go ahead and look at the crew a little bit more deeply. All right, the AX-2 mission commander is Axiom Space Director of Human Spaceflight and retired NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. During the next 10 days, she'll extend her record as the American with the most amount of time spent in space. Here is a closer look at Peggy.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Rocket Tranquility.
I saw the first guys walk on the moon, Neil and Buzz, in 1969. I was 9 years old, and I thought, what a cool job. Of course, I was a farm kid from Iowa. How was I ever going to do that? I didn't tell anybody from the time I was 9, raising chickens and learning to fly and all that. I wasn't telling people that I wanted to become an astronaut because it sounded like an impossible dream. And it wasn't until the first females were selected and I graduated from high school, and that to me was when I decided, hey, maybe this is real. Maybe I really can be an astronaut. And it became a goal instead of just a dream.
Peggy Whitson became the first female commander of the International Space Station. She also set records in these categories: most days in space for a U.S. astronaut, and more hours spacewalking than any other woman.
She understands what human spaceflight really means when you approach it with that awe and respect and humility. It's like you're doing it justice.
The experience of just being in space is incredibly special and unique. But to me, the most important perspective is perspective. You look out the window, you see planet Earth, and it gives you this perspective of how important that we're all one. And we're building this place out in space to replicate the piece parts that we have on Earth. I'm really excited to take this crew up to the space station, number one, because they're all rookies, and this is going to be fun to just relive those first moments with them as they get into space and get to see their excitement and their expressions and joy.
AX-2 means there's a 2.0 to her career, and now she gets to help a wonderful company to take that next step in its mission.
Her congeniality and her manner, extremely comforting, and it gave me the confidence that I could do this.
She is inspiring. Personally, I look up to her and I want to be like her.
I don't know. I love everything about Peggy. She's my role model.
I'm Axiom astronaut Peggy Whitson.
The pilot for AX-2 is private astronaut John Schaffner. A STEAM advocate, business pioneer, and lifelong space enthusiast, he's been a pilot since the age of 17 and participates in extreme sports from hang gliding to base jumping to high-performance racing. Let's get to know a little bit more about John.
Why do you do these things?
Well, they're fun. They help you find your edge. You know, I would say limit, but we don't really want to find the limit. You want to find the edge, I think.
John is a human dynamo, and he is multifaceted, and they can go off in any different direction. But that's just the way he is. You know, it's over and above.
I was probably the outlier in the group. I was always striking out and the one climbing trees and on roofs and setting things on fire. I grew up near an airport. I had access to airplanes. I started flying when I was 15. Got my license shortly when I was eligible. It was just something I did. In the early 60s, actually 1963, when Jim and I began flying, it was big news. It's easy for an 8-year-old at that time to fall in love with space. That was our fun. Cardboard boxes, rolling down hills, emulating space training, Gemini pilots. So space just became part of the fabric of me, and it never left.
I'd heard about private astronaut travel before. A little bit of research pulled up Axiom Space and their mission.
Well, my wife brought it to my attention. She saw the news article of Axiom flying and said, hey, you can finally go to space. And the moment I heard about this opportunity, I knew I would be on board.
He's on a mission to encourage young minds to use their imagination. And from there, he says, possibilities are endless.
I'm taking a patch for the Middlesbrough Independent School Systems. This is their middle school who last year actually decided to become a STEM certified school. What I want to do is show teachers and educators the value of listening and paying attention to what is in a student and help nurture what they see in them. It's hard to go against your nature, but if you can listen to yourself and follow that voice, then you have an obligation to nurture that. I'm John Schaffner, and I'm the pilot of AX-2.
Representing the Saudi Space Commission and representing the Saudi Space Commission and serving as mission specialist, Ali Al-Karni is an Air Force captain in the Royal Saudi Air Force.
We will be commencing health check for launch escape system. Expect a momentary flight computer state change, followed by a transition back to pad hatch closed.
And Dragon copies, we saw that.
Having trained at King Faisal Air Academy, as well as multiple bases in the U.S., Ali has flown as a fighter pilot for 12 years. Ali was selected as an astronaut in 2020. Here's more on Ali.
I grew up in the southwest region of Saudi Arabia, in a very small town called Sabt al-Alaya. I've always wondered about planes and how they fly. Back then in Saudi Arabia, we did not have a lot of places or flying academies you could apply to. So I have to go and find a place that could train me. That's why I applied for the Air Force Academy to be a fighter pilot. The best moment for me is once I hit the throttles in full AB and the aircraft start rolling down the runway. And as I take off, I watch my shadow and see how fast I'm going. That gives me a joy that I cannot describe. I am Ali Al-Karni, and I am Mission Specialist 1 on AX-2. Being selected to be part of this mission make me privileged and honored to represent my country. I was really surprised about the results out of the announcement. People are loving it. People are super supportive of the mission. I consider myself a newly married. I've been married for 3 years now. And I've had my daughter. She's 12 months old. And I want to share with them how big it is what I'm about to do. It is an amazing opportunity to be on top of a rocket filled with fuel and gas that are gonna boost you to space. The team is amazing. We have worked so much to make sure we have a good crew coherence, and right now I can say that we do complement each other. Every single one of us has been trained to do everything regarding this mission.
I would like to thank Axiom Space for enabling us to go back to space and giving us this opportunity.
I have an amazing family. They are supportive of me throughout my career, and I want them to know before I step into the rocket that I love them, and I will always be there, whether physically or mentally, with them, and I'll do whatever it takes to make them feel happy and loved.
Representing the Saudi Space Commission and also serving as mission specialist, Rayana Barnawi has a master's degree in biomedical sciences from Al Faisal University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and a bachelor's degree in
finding a piece of the puzzle that could solve a mystery. I never thought that I will ever be going to space, but at the same time, it feels like a dream come true. It's an overwhelming feeling, of course. Home for me is a small town. My dad had a little farm. He taught us how to plant. That was one of the first experiments. That was one of the most fascinating feelings. My grandmother. To me, she is my role model. I can say that my grandma is my biggest fan, and I'm very glad that I have my grandma's support.
Saudi Arabia will be sending its first woman astronaut to the International Space Station. Rayana Barnawi, a biomedical researcher, is part of a private mission operated by Axiom Space.
It's a big honor to be able to go to space and at the same time do the things that you love the most.
It's not just that you have a nation that's proud of you, but you are creating the dream and the opportunity for this next generation to become the next space engineers and creating the idea that the infinite is possible and that space is a true opportunity.
زي ما قال سمو ولي العهد محمد بن سلمان نحن دولة للحالمين. أي حد عنده حلم يقدر يحلم.
Confirmation that the side hatch was closed and we got a good leak check. So everything is continuing to progress on time.
Great. And as operations continue, we want to provide an overview of some of the science and research activities planned for the AX-2 mission. To help us unpack the breadth of Axiom-managed payloads is one who has helped every principal investigation team prepare for this mission, our very own chief scientist, Dr. Lucy Lowe. She's at Kennedy Space Center in Florida with Axiom Space Director of Digital Strategy, Sonia Gavankar-McKay. Sonia, great to see you, and we're excited to understand what's ahead in the next couple of weeks for our crew.
Thanks so much, Duke. It's great to be here with all of you as the excitement really builds toward launch. We're just a few miles away. In fact, you may be able to see the Falcon 9 rocket with the AX-2 crew on board just over my shoulder. And yes, I'm joined with Axiom Space Chief Scientist for Microgravity Research, Dr. Lucy Lowe. Lucy, how excited are you for what's to come?
Hi, Sonia. I mean, it's a fantastically exciting mission. There is an absolute massive amount of research that the crew is going to be doing, and I can't wait to see them get started.
And there is a massive amount of research they have to do, and we have just a little bit of time to cover it, so let's dive right in. It is packed for it, but what has been the scientific strategy for this mission, and what do we expect to see?
So the scientific strategy is really continuing what we did on AX-1, which is expanding access to microgravity for a whole new global community of researchers. So we're really excited to welcome on board our Saudi Arabian partners and see them do the research they want to do. We also have some opportunities to expand commercial opportunities by manufacturing products in space that could be beneficial for life here on Earth. So we have a glut of projects that are going to be doing all kinds of stuff about in-space manufacturing. So we're really excited about those.
Now, you've organized the portfolio into 5 main categories, and we're going to kind of touch on each one of them very briefly. Let's start with physical sciences. I noticed that from the list there is radiation protection research as well as some storm-related research that is looking at how weather and climate and seeding clouds. Tell me what this all means.
Exactly. So we have a really fun experiment that's brought from us from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia looking at cloud seeding. So they're looking at how silver iodide crystals can actually form water vapor in a specially designed chamber. So they're not only understanding how cloud seeding could be more effective here on Earth, but they're also looking with a vision to perhaps extraterrestrial agriculture, so maybe growing crops on the moon and in Mars in future.
Wow.
We also have projects looking at radiation shielding, so the sun spits out a bunch of radiation. So looking at how different kinds of polymers could actually protect the electronics on the space station could actually help with future spacecraft design. And then finally, you mentioned storms. We have some really fun projects where the crew are actually going to be trying to capture images of what we call transient luminous effects, which are events events which occur just above thunderstorms at the same time that lightning strikes. And we can't see them from the ground because we're underneath the clouds. So on top of the clouds, we can see these phenomena, and it helps us understand more about our own weather and climate down here on Earth.
Excellent. So the next portfolio is life sciences. Research includes DNA, nanomaterials, and reprogramming skin cells to help create regenerative medicine. There's also research planned to build on AX1 science modeling tumor organoids to better predict and treat cancers. Can you break down a few of those for us and tell me again what we can expect to see, what the astronauts will be doing up in space?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I refer to some of those in-space manufacturing projects, so the DNA-inspired nanomaterial that you referred to could actually be used as a therapeutic delivery agent in future, or as a scaffolding for degenerating joints. We have also projects looking at 3D bioprinted tissues, so looking at liver and kidney and seeing how they respond in microgravity, which could be potentially very informative for helping us understand regenerative